An entitled Disney dad freaks out when a Make-A-Wish family cuts in line to see a character at Disney World, as he literally makes a scene about their kid cutting in line, saying that he wished that his kid had a disease so that they could cut lines all the time. And I'm honestly still blown away by this guy's awful statements. Here's what happened. Okay, so at Disney World, we have quite a few Make-A-Wish families, and if you're not familiar with Make-A-Wish, it's an organization that grants wishes to very sick children. These kids are often terminally ill, and it breaks my heart every time they come to visit the characters. Everybody in the room always gets very emotional. Make-A-Wish families get special treatment in the parks, as they should. These kids usually cannot wait in long lines, so if you have a Make-A-Wish pass, you have a fast pass for everything. And for rides, it's easy. Just send the family through the fast pass lane. But for characters, it can get a bit tricky. We have some characters that meet outside, and therefore don't have a fast pass lane. There's one queue, and you can see how many people are in front of you, since there aren't any twisty queue lines that go through a building. In this case, Make-A-Wish families just come up to the character attendant, which is the person that takes care of the character, which in this case is me, and shows us their special pass. We go over to the next family in the regular line, inform them that the Make-A-Wish family is going to cut in front of them, and after they're done, that next family will get their turn. Usually, people are hot and sweaty and tired, but they get it, and they wave me away with a quick, "Oh, it's no problem." Sometimes their kids get a bit frustrated because they don't understand why the Make-A-Wish kid can get to cut in front of everybody, but the parents explain that they're doing a good deed by letting a really sick kid go first. Sometimes people get huffy, but I just ignore them. They'll be fine to wait another minute. Well, occasionally people get really upset because they don't know what Make-A-Wish means, but it's oftentimes pretty obvious that the kid is very sick, so people can put two and two together with context clues, and we can always explain if they still don't get it. But for the most part, American families have heard of Make-A-Wish and know what that means. However, people can still get really mad. I had a friend who was character attending with Princess Aurora who saw a Make-A-Wish family let the next family in line know what was going on and was shocked to hear the entitled dad's response. And this is honestly one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. They say to this family's dad, "I'm sorry, sir. This Make-A-Wish family is going to go first. Thank you so much for your patience." This entitled jerk then says, "Are you kidding me? We've been waiting forever. This is ridiculous." My friend then says, "I'm sorry, sir," and then shot him a really confused look and turned away to focus on the Make-A-Wish family. This entitled Disney dad then says something that honestly blew our minds. "Wow, I wish my kid had a disease so that they could cut all the lines." And he muttered this under his breath, probably louder than he intended to. Well, when he said that, everybody froze. Princess Aurora, my friend who was working, the family behind this entitled Disney dad, and the Make-A-Wish family all turned to stare at this idiot. Aurora was pissed and said something to the effect of, "Well, that wasn't a very princely thing to say," before turning her attention to the Make-A-Wish little girl. Her mom looked like she was about to cry, and my friend barely kept his composure, went right over to this guy and said, "I bet our friends here would give anything to be in your shoes, don't you think?" The family behind this entitled jerk also grumbled about him being rude and horrible. Well, this guy knew that he had put his foot in his mouth. His daughter was oblivious to the entire thing, thankfully, as she was quietly playing with her Barbie and barely even blinked when she was told that she'd have to wait a bit longer to see Aurora. During their turn, Aurora was cold towards the entitled dad, but great with the daughter. They had a long talk about how a real princess is kind and patient and compassionate towards others. After it was all said and done, the entitled Disney dad slunk away, and I honestly hope he learned from his awful behavior. Oh my gosh, that is honestly so unbelievably horrible. I can't imagine someone being so out of touch and so obtuse that they would say something so devastating. Like seriously, who in their right mind would say something like that in front of a family who is clearly suffering? There was no reason for that kind of language or to say something like that. Like, this kid is already suffering enough, and this guy's literally only thinking about the line in front of him, not about the little kid that probably will not make it in a few years, if that. What a horrible human being, like seriously. In the back of my head, I kind of wish he would have been kicked out of the park for that comment, but I can understand why he had to stay in line because that probably would have been a bad look for everybody all around. But regardless, good for everybody involved for the way they handled this, especially with Aurora basically putting this guy in his place by teaching the daughter a lesson, because that guy is an absolute monster for the things that he just said. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my girlfriend bring her dead dog's ashes on vacation? Because right now she is very pissed off and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My girlfriend and I have been together for 4 months, and she had a dog that died a few months ago before we met. I have only ever spent the night at her place. I live with my sister and her 2 kids, so it is a little chaotic at my place. My girlfriend has a small urn on her bedside table that has her dog's ashes in it, and it's maybe maybe 2 to 3 inches tall. Before she turns off her lamp to go to sleep, she always gives it a little tap on the top and says goodnight as though she is talking to the dog. And I think it's weird, but I never have said anything about it. We were supposed to go away for the weekend, and on Friday I was watching her pack, and I noticed that she took the urn and put it in the top pocket of her backpack. I asked her what she was doing, and she says she didn't want to leave the dog behind. I told her she was not allowed to bring the urn as it made me very uncomfortable. I didn't want to see it anytime we returned to our hotel room. I didn't want her talking to her dead dog after we spent quality time together. It's weird, and frankly, she's been mourning this dog for too long. Now, she didn't argue, but instead, she simply started to unpack her bag. She told me to have fun on the weekend getaway, as she would not be coming along. I then asked if she was seriously choosing a dog's ashes over me, but she said she was choosing herself over me, as I could have spoken to her with some kindness and empathy, but I didn't. She also said that I didn't get to dictate how long she's allowed to grieve, and then she asked me to leave. She hasn't replied to my text messages, and I think she's completely overreacting. And when I talked to my sister, she said that she can see both sides of this argument. So honestly, am I the jerk for thinking my girlfriend is weird for being so attached to her dead dog's ashes? Because right now I'm honestly not sure what to do. Oh my gosh, I don't think I've seen anything so insensitive in so long. For starters, yes, to the original poster, I really do think you're the jerk, because this was so uncalled for. Your girlfriend is clearly grieving the loss of her dog. This obviously hit her hard, and she's having a hard time overcoming it. So for you to literally start trying to control her life, all because you find it weird, instead of trying to understand why everything's going wrong, like that is so toxic it's not even funny. Because I know for a fact if I was in the original poster shoes, I would be trying to comfort her and be like, listen, I understand where you're coming from and I want to help. So telling her that she's not allowed to bring her dog's ashes with her on this trip, like that is not okay. Especially when this is not even that big of an urn. It's literally 3 inches tall, like that's nothing. So what if she has it with her on the nightstand? Like, does that really make a difference in your life? This is such an inconsequential thing, you really just should have kept your mouth shut and helped her work through this process of grieving her dog. So yes, you are absolutely the jerk. The way you handled this was completely uncalled for, and I don't blame her for being upset and not wanting to go on this trip. Entitled old people absolutely lose their mind anytime they find out that I'm not religious, causing them to change entirely, showing me that they were hypocrites from the very beginning. Here's what happened. Okay, I'm almost 30 years old, and I was raised by a Christian mom, and honestly, I hated it. I stopped following anything related to religion at around 13 years old, and I never looked back. I completely get why people are religious and follow a higher power, and I'm never rude when I find out someone is religious. I try to abide by their rules, like if there's a dietary restriction or a gift of some kind. I don't like making anyone feel uncomfortable, so I always go out of my way to understand their point of view when it comes to certain topics. But some of these older people, on the other hand, are just completely out of left field. Every time I tell an old person I'm not religious, it flips a switch in them that is honestly just so frightening, to the point where I'm scared to tell people that I'm not religious. They go from being full of smiles and kindness all the way to a massive frown, and they act like I'm Satan. I usually get hit with the biggest and longest and most boring religious bombardment by these people. And at one point, someone yelled "shame on you" in front of everyone when I was at work, and that caught me so off guard. I also find it crazy how they think it's okay to try and inflict a particular fate onto you just because you aren't religious, that I'm apparently destined to be damned for eternity. Like, brother, I was having a bad day. Do you really want to say that? Like, I don't act this way when I see someone wearing a cross. My own mother and many of my aunts are Christians, so like I know how to act and be respectful. I don't go on any anti-religious tirades to other people. You want to know why? Because it's rude and intrusive. I'm not religious because that's how I want to live my life. Other people are religious because that's how they want to live their lives. It's now gotten to the point where, as of late, I've been invited to churches a lot more often these last 2 years, and I never get a normal response when I tell them I'm not interested. If anything, they start to push even more. Some old woman even pulled into our driveway when my dad was changing a tire and was talking about the church that she goes to and how we should join. And it's like, ma'am, thank you for the invite, but when you see a man laying under a vehicle, maybe you should leave him alone. My one uncle will once in a while send me like 30-minute videos of sermons and Bible readings or scriptures, and it literally offends him to no end when I ask him to stop sending me these things because I'm not a part of his church and I never have been. This then usually results in him sending me more religious material that are usually crudely highlighted or circled as if he's trying to teach me a lesson, and a lesson in what is honestly anybody's guess. No doubt if I send him videos about atheists or agnostics, I know for a fact he would lose his mind. I love how he no longer sees me as his niece that he can just talk to or bond with, and instead some lost soul he's trying to conjure to his following. It really sucks because I'm still a human being with feelings and emotions. I am literally no different than anyone else, other than I just simply do not want to follow a religion or go to church. Instead of sending me a funny video about a dog or a clip from my favorite TV show, he either completely ignores me or sends me some more weirdly religious stuff I don't understand, because again, I'm not a part of his religion. I just wish these older people would understand that in modern day society, people are choosing to live alternative lifestyles that are virtually harmless and leave people alone. I don't go around asking people to stop being religious. That is literally insane behavior. Some people I used to be close with straight up stopped talking to me when they found out, as if I committed some sort of horrible crime, which baffled me because I knew you were religious and I still loved and cherished you like a normal human being. I don't know, man. It all just really sucks, and I seriously hate being treated this way. Okay, I'm honestly right on the original poster's side because I cannot understand why anyone would act this way. It's one thing to tell someone, hey, you should check out my church, but it's another thing to be super intrusive in this other person's life and then treat them like garbage when they say no or they don't like follow your religion. Because that's like proof right there that you never actually cared. You only cared about them joining your church and nothing else. You were just trying to check some stupid box and that's it. And that, in my opinion, is so hypocritical because I don't know about you, but I could smell BS from a mile away, and I honestly don't care what religion it is. When someone's pushing their religion heavily onto me and I know for a fact they don't actually care about me, it is like a lighthouse in the middle of the night. You can see it from a mile away and it's like, my God, you've got to be kidding me right now. These people don't actually care about me and they only want me to join their religion for some weird selfish purposes. So yeah, these people who are treating you poorly honestly are not good people in the slightest. And I seriously do not blame you for being frustrated. Am I the jerk for not being comfortable in wearing a dress, even though my best friend is asking I wear one to be in her wedding party? Because right now I'm incredibly frustrated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my best friend is getting married in about 6 months. I'm in the wedding party and I would be her maid of honor if not for her sister. I'm a masculine-leaning lesbian with short hair and very androgynous style. Think collared shirts and Carhartt pants. I'm a farmer and an outdoors person, and my style reflects that. I don't think I own anything that would be considered chic or nice. Needless to say, it's been years ever since I've worn a dress. When her and I have talked about her weddings, we always talked about me wearing a cute little suit or jumper type of thing, and she was always totally on board with this, saying, oh, definitely, and that this is the obvious choice. Well, a couple of weeks ago, she sent a message to all the wedding party girls that included a note about what kind of dresses she wanted us to wear, such as the length and the colors, and asking that we show her our choices first before purchasing. I then texted her on the side and I said, I'm okay to wear a suit for the wedding, yes? And she responded with a long message that included things like how she looked up pictures of bridesmaids with suits and how she thought it looked messy and like an outlier. She said I could wear a flowy jumper with wide legs that could look like a dress, but that it may need to be a dress for the day. I was totally surprised by this and very uncomfortable with the idea, and also hurt by the words she used to describe the assumed one lesbian and non-binary person in the bridesmaid lineup photos that she found. Now, I haven't responded yet, but the tension is palpable. I'm not even sure how to respond or if I should push back in some kind of way, but the idea of standing up there in front of so many people I know, as this is a big wedding, in a dress of some kind really just makes me cringe. My other friend I asked about said that she can't even picture me wearing a dress. I know that it's her day, and that my outfit may theoretically detract some attention from her, as I would be the only bridesmaid not in a dress. But is it wrong of her to ask me to go against my gender identity and try to comfort her just for wedding photos? Part of me feels like me wearing a dress would be equally as weird of a distraction because everyone would be wondering why I'm in a dress, since they know me and my style and my gender expression. I don't want to rock the boat or make this about me, but I want to show her that it's disrespectful and hurtful of her to ask that of me. It feels like she wants me up there as a prop and not as my whole self. What should I do? Honestly, I think this might be a good time to step away from the wedding party and just attend as a guest. Like if that was me and someone put me in that situation and I felt the way that you did about the whole dress thing, then I would be like, look, I understand and I really appreciate it, but I think I just wouldn't be a good fit for this and I'm just going to be a guest. And then just leave it at that, because this obviously is a sticking point for you, and I don't think compromising that in any way is going to solve things. Today, I messed up by getting a server fired over a wrong pizza, resulting in one of the most awkward lunches I've ever had eating out. Here's what happened. Okay, so I went out for lunch today at a local pizzeria. The place was packed and you could tell that everyone was really stressed out, especially the owner, who I am acquainted with relatively well. So I order a pizza and everything seems fine up to this point. Eventually, the pizza arrives and I notice that it's the wrong pizza. I order the one that's named after the owner, while the pizza that I got was the one named after the restaurant. The owner just so happened to walk by, so I let him know by saying, "Sorry, but I think we got the wrong pizza." He then muttered the name of the pizza and picked it up, quickly and quietly disappearing into the kitchen. As I waited, I noticed that the owner called the server who took my order into the kitchen. The next thing I heard was the owner giving this guy a severe dressing down that literally could be heard from the dining room, telling him that this is the third or fourth time in the past week that he mixed up the pizza orders and said that wrong orders are getting comped from his paycheck. He then ended it by kicking the server out. I eventually saw the server quickly getting his jacket and leaving the pizzeria. And now I feel like garbage because I feel as if said server would still be here if it weren't for my complaint about the wrong pizza. Now, the ironic part is that I ended up getting another wrong pizza, but I didn't want to sacrifice another server over it, so I just let it go and I ate that one. The pizza was okay, the toppings were just kind of thrown on the dough, collecting in the middle of the pizza in one big pig pile. I ended up giving a big tip before leaving, but I don't think I'm ever going back to that pizzeria ever again. Oh man, this scenario is a nightmare. I'm sure all you wanted to do was eat some pizza and then get out of there. You definitely didn't plan on getting two different pizzas that were not what you ordered, while also getting someone fired in the process. Like, I don't know about you, but that's not how I would ever want to plan my lunch out. So yeah, this wasn't really a mess up on your end. I'm sure that server was probably on thin ice as it is, and you just so happen to be the final straw that broke the camel's back. Because my god, that is not a scenario I would ever want to be in. Am I the jerk for demanding that my fiance's parents change their plans to have a vacation at the same place as our honeymoon? Because right now I'm very frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my fiance and I have our wedding coming up in April. We had brainstormed for a while on where best to spend our honeymoon, and we went over the more popular and well-known places, but then landed on a more offbeat destination that I felt would truly be a great place for us to start our life as a married couple. I've been looking forward to it just being the two of us, and I know he has a really hectic work schedule, and we were going to make the most out of this no matter what. A couple of days ago, he told me that his parents had been impressed about how hyped I was about it, and we're planning on going there for vacation too, largely overlapping with our dates. And in fact, they're staying at the same hotel as us. And honestly, I was livid. They can go any other time, but why right now? He said that he had suggested that, but his mom said that they had taken time off for the wedding too, and it worked well into their plans. Also, that since we're going to be going back, it will allow them to maybe see us a few times before we leave. I was almost in tears. I was so angry. He tried to reassure me, saying that they'd promise it'll be two separate things and they won't be inserting themselves into our honeymoon. They want us to enjoy it and they'd be doing their own thing. And I want to believe it, but I know his mom. I like her as a soon-to-be mother-in-law, but she can be very clingy and routinely laments how far he and now us are from them. So I just have a feeling that the two plans are not going to be as independent as he thinks they're going to be. I vented about it to my parents too, and my mom agreed with me that it isn't right, and my dad is more on the fence about it as he doesn't think that everything is ruined. I've demanded my fiance make them change their plans, and he says that he asked them to, and they promised to do their own thing. And honestly, what can he do? Tell them that he doesn't believe them and call them liars? Well, I messed up here and I said, well, if that's what it takes, and then he got quiet. I realized that was too much, and I sincerely apologize for crossing a line. This has been eating me up, and I was envisioning a certain type of honeymoon, and then this happens. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I am incredibly pissed off. Oh no, you are not the jerk. This is honestly not okay. You mean to tell me that instead of rescheduling their stupid vacation, they're planning on still going while you guys are on your honeymoon? Like, are you kidding me right now? That is so uncalled for. And they're staying at the same hotel. Like, that is honestly so toxic. There is legitimately no good excuse for that, especially because they know what they're doing. And I guarantee you this is all some kind of ploy to be like, oh, we just happen to run into you. Like, no one's gonna want to go on their honeymoon and deal with this garbage. So no, you are definitely not the jerk. This is uncalled for behavior, and I don't blame you for being pissed off. An entitled realtor parked in my spot at my apartment complex and then decided to give me the biggest attitude on planet Earth when I asked him to move. So I decided to get some petty revenge by playing music as loud as possible to try and ruin this realtor's chance at selling anything in my neighborhood. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I lived in a condo where we all had assigned parking spots, and there are several visitor spots sprinkled throughout. Well, one day I came home in the middle of the weekday, and a vast majority of the parking spaces were empty. So I was very confused as to why a large, unfamiliar SUV was in my spot. Now, we get the occasional visitor that mistakenly or purposefully parks in whatever spot they want. With this in mind, I parked right behind him and approached the window to ask him how long he was planning to be there, and he said to me 45 minutes. I then asked him if he could move to a visitor spot, as there were some directly across from mine, and he said no in the rudest and shrillest voice I've ever heard come out of a man. Then he started going off about how he's a realtor, he's showing this house, you know, the door to which is directly directly in front of my spot. The property manager said to park here in this spot, even though I highly doubt that, and so on and so forth. So I decided that I didn't have any time or energy for Karens that day, and in the middle of his ranting, I just said okay then and walked away to go park in a visitor spot. Rude people really irritate me, especially if they're defending their awful behavior. So I promptly took my revenge. My window faces the parking lot, so I set up my speaker on the windowsill and started blasting hardcore rap music for about half an hour, in the hopes that the buyer decided our quiet little community wasn't quiet enough for them. I figure the vast majority of my neighbors were at work anyways, so 30 minutes of loud music wasn't going to annoy anyone too much. So I really hope I wasted a bunch of his time, because maybe next time don't be rude to complete strangers, especially if you're parking in their spot. Yeah, if anyone's parking in my spot and then talking to me like that, I'm gonna make their life a living nightmare. Whether that's playing music really loud like the original poster did, or even calling a tow truck company, which by the way, you would have been well within your right to do. So good for you for getting back at this guy, because the way he acted was completely unacceptable. An entitled Karen straight out of the depths of Walmart freaks out when she doesn't get her way, demanding that these incompetent employees bend to her every whim. But karma comes right back around and puts this entitled Karen right in her place, leaving this Karen absolutely dumbfounded. Here's what happened. So for context, the lines were extra long at Walmart today, and they only had half the registers open. They decided to open up another express line just so they could get the crowds moving just a little bit more. This entitled Karen with an overflowing cart sees this and seizes the opportunity, rushing straight into that line. Keep in mind, this line is 20 items or less, and she has way more than that. The employee trying to wrangle the crowd and trying to direct shoppers towards express, regular, and self-service lanes tries really hard to get this entitled Karen into the regular line, or at least to self-serve. But this entitled Karen huffed and puffed in the way that a typical Karen does when they don't get exactly what they want. So in an effort to avoid a fight, the employee just lets it go, while also giving me a warning gaze, basically saying things are about to pop off. When this entitled Karen gets up to the cash register and starts literally dumping her stuff all over the belt, while loudly mumbling about all the incompetent employees, the cashier gently but firmly tells her that she cannot go through this lane with a cart full of groceries, and that this lane is 20 items or less. And as I'm sure you could have guessed, an argument with this entitled Karen ensues, and she is simply not having it. She starts screaming, demanding to be seen right now, as she already put all of her stuff onto the cart. She tries to claim that the cashier has to check her out, or she could lose her stupid little job. She was trying to flip the script and hold this employee's job over their head. She went on for about 10 minutes longer while the line is building up behind her. The cashier in this situation though is as cool as a cucumber and isn't bothered by this Karen. And to top it all off, they did not budge, stating that this entitled Karen could not go through this line with that many items, and that she is welcome to join one of the non-express lines, while also gently reminding her that the express line is just that, to let people with a few items get through faster. That way lines don't build up. But the entitled Karen only gets more angry as she continues to argue. She's now demanding in an aggressive manner that the rest of the people in the line go to another cashier so that this cashier can help her specifically with all 100 items that she has. She even seriously tried to claim that that would be quicker, even though that would be at everyone else's expense. Off to the side, a manager who was watching all this go down does just that. They jump into an open register and tells the people in the line that she can assist them. The manager shoots the cashier a knowing look, and that is where some beautiful malicious compliance started to take place. The entitled Karen is looking smug and superior at this point, thinking that she won and got the better of these employees, but she honestly couldn't be more wrong. As soon as the manager opens the other register, the cashier tells the Karen, "I'm sorry ma'am, I'm on break. This aisle's closed. Please feel free to join the non-express lines." And this is when the entitled Karen loses it. The entitled Karen starts screaming at the manager, who just opened up the lane, demanding that they make this cashier check her out. But the manager turns around and says no, she is on break. Please feel free to use one of the non-express lines. At this point, the entitled Karen is absolutely boiling mad. She quickly shovels her stuff back into the cart and actually tries to shove her way up to the front of a new express line. The manager is still cool and says this line is for 20 items and less. I will be unable to assist you. Please feel free to join any non-express line. And at this point, I thought the entitled Karen's head was going to explode. She was absolutely enraged at this point and storms out of the store, leaving her cart behind and screaming about how she will never shop here again, and that she will have both of their jobs taken away from them, on top of all these other ridiculous angry claims. But that is honestly not even the best part. In her rage, she forgot her purse in the cart and had to come back just to get it. The manager that was checking people out and put this Karen in her place was one of only 2 managers on duty, and she was still helping the checkout line. And to top it all off, the purse was at the cash register. This manager made this entitled Karen wait in line the entire time just to get her purse back. And when the Karen came up, she didn't say a word, knowing that she looked like an absolute fool. And it was nice to see that sometimes karma really does come through. It is honestly so embarrassing watching some weird entitled Karen freak out in public when everybody and their mother around them knows that they are in the wrong, and that the way they're acting is just cringeworthy and toxic. So it's really cool to see that there are still people out there who won't take this kind of garbage sitting down. And this entitled Karen literally had to wait longer, all because she couldn't go to the proper line. If she had literally just gone to the right line, she would have been out of there on time. But at the end of the day, entitled people are gonna be just that. They're gonna be entitled. And in the case of this entitled Walmart Karen, I don't think there's much anybody could do to help her. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for taking revenge on the very people who banned me from multiple Discord servers? So I used to watch a streamer back in 2019. He had a handful of daily viewers, including me. I used to watch his streams regularly and made good bonds with regular viewers. Later, he announced his Discord server, so I joined the server that time, but didn't know how to use Discord. So I just let it be there, but didn't really use it. Fast forward to 2020 and COVID hits, and so there is a quarantine. I spent every day in my house with no friends to meet up with, and nothing to do at all. So out of boredom, I opened up Discord. I set up my account, and I visited the server, as it was the only server which I had on my list that I joined a year ago at the time. I went on chat channels and messaged. I ended up recognizing some of the people there by their names, as we used to chat on the live chat section of the stream all the time. I also had the same name from the accounts from the platform that we used to watch the streams together on. Therefore, everybody recognized me and greeted me as well. After a while, there comes one person we will call Candace. That's not her real name. Now, she is one of the people that later on went to become the main reason of this story. Let me give you some background. She was 2 years older than me, and she was a senior moderator in the server. I also knew her from the stream. She was very kind and gentle towards me, mainly because I was younger, so I referred to her as my sister. Anyways, I regularly start visiting the server. I'm chatting with the reunited friends that I found again, and it was honestly so fun. I was getting emotionally attached and involved in various activities with everyone there, such as playing games, listening to songs, stuff like that. And this was especially helpful, as there was no one else that lived close by me that I could talk to or have any kind of relation with. So I spent most of my time in that Discord server. I also exchanged a lot of social media handles. Fast forward to about 2 months after being a regular, and before this, I hadn't really talked to the managers or the admins because I didn't feel like I needed to. They also almost never had come online for about 2 months. There were 4 of them. There was Travis, Pony, Lucas, and Buck. It was late night and I was talking to my friends. And at this point, all of my friends from the server were there from the past year, and they were acquainted with all of the above people. But since I was new, I didn't really know them that well. Now, the guy I mentioned earlier by the name of Pony was a very short-tempered guy. He just randomly came to chat in invisible mode. For those of you who don't know what invisible mode is, it basically means that you're on an offline status. I didn't know that he was an admin. He then suddenly started trolling me and said to me, "I will ban you," to which I replied to him that he can't ban me because obviously I had no clue that he was one of the admins. Then, just to show that he could, he actually really did ban me. And when that happened, I could not believe it. I just sat there for a minute with my screen black, nothing on it, before I realized what had happened. I DM'd everyone I could. Candace eventually told me to message Travis or Buck, so I reached out to them, and thankfully Travis replied back and unbanned me. I was so desperate to get back onto the server, not just to see my friends, but also because I had filed an application to be a moderator, and the results were coming out the next day. So I wanted to know if I made the cut. They shortlisted 10 applicants, and they were going to select roughly 4 people based on how active you've been on the server. The next day, I thankfully get selected as a mod, and I was so happy. All the admins, managers, and senior moderators congratulated the new moderators and gave them their roles, explaining to them how things work. I was very happy that day. Fast forward to a couple days later, and a few of my friends, myself and Candace, were casually playing and talking in the chat channel. Candace and I were joking back and forth with one another, and everyone was sarcastically talking about a hypothetical situation. I then see Lucas online. He then comes into the chat and starts typing something I didn't pay attention to, as I was just talking to Candace. Then, out of nowhere, I get kicked out of the server again. I honestly couldn't believe it. I rejoined the server, but I was then kicked again. Lucas then says, basically, I'm gonna get kicked again, and then the next time I will be banned permanently. Now, from the time that I had become a moderator up until present day, I had become greatly acquainted with all the administrators. Lucas was about 3 to 4 years older than me, so I had no idea why he just kicked me. A few days later, the same thing happens, and we both break into an argument. We started screaming at each other, and he got very abusive towards me, and by the end of it, he gave me a ban. Later again, I was thankfully unbanned by Buck, as Buck was a kind guy and always was cool-minded. I explained to him the situation, and I asked him if he knew the reason why I was getting kicked and banned, to which he told me that apparently Candace and Lucas were in a relationship. This was all very new information to me, and that honestly explained why he started banning me out of nowhere. After I was unbanned, I explained to Lucas that I see Candace as an older sister, nothing more, and I didn't even know that they were in a relationship, so I apologized to him and said I'm sorry. I thought this might solve things, but he was more furious. He then started to constantly bully me on the server. Now, we had another server owned by Pony, and Pony, despite our confrontation in the past, had become a great friend of mine, or so I thought. So let's call his server P server. After some days, we get a ping from P server to join the server with Pony on voice chat. He said that he was feeling sad and depressed, to which I said, what happened? Nothing more, nothing less. Lucas was suddenly there and began attacking me again, and this time he banned me from the P server. I already had a feeling that this was going to happen, but I felt really bad regardless, and I honestly just couldn't do anything about it. But for some reason, I recorded it. Whenever he used to be online, I started going offline, and it was the best thing for me. And I also stopped talking to Candace too, because whenever I used to talk to her, he used to ban me, and I became so attached to that server that I couldn't leave it. Months go by, and October arrives, and I get the best chance of my life. By this time, I knew how to make a fully functional Discord server, with program bots and everything. It was afternoon, and no one was online from staff except me. A content creator who had millions of followings messaged me on Discord to make him a server. He was the owner's friend on the server I was moderating. He asked me if I could build him a server without any delay, to which I replied yes. I also informed Pony, and Pony told Travis. Now, to be honest, this was the worst mistake there. I was excited, as it was the first time talking to a big content creator. So we all joined in and talked to this content creator and discussed about design and the type of server that he wants. After half an hour of discussion with him, we talked about what responsibilities we would take. Travis says that he has exams going on and can't give the time that he would normally give to help out with the server, but he can help out if I need something. Pony also says this too, while also adding that we three only have the top role and that we can't share it with anyone else. Now, with all this in mind, I alone have to make the whole server. I didn't give it much in terms of thinking about it, so I just made the server. At first, I thought it would be an easy task, but it ended up taking my whole day creating every channel, as well as setting up bots and programming them to do everything that we needed them to do. So for better context, this new server is going to be called Server 2, and the original one will be called Server 1. In the evening, Travis and Pony view the Discord server, just to show their appreciation, as well as to check up on me here and there, and then just go offline. The next day goes fine, and we invite a couple of friends from Server 1 to Server 2. We also appoint some mods to moderate everything that's going to go on in this server. The server wasn't made official yet. Lucas comes to, and he was clearly jealous and angry when he saw me at the top. He ended up messaging Travis and Pony and wanted to talk to them in private. As a result, they gave him managing permissions on the server, but at the time I didn't care because he couldn't bully me here. I was very happy because now it was like me staying at the top and no one could bully me no matter what. But I was mistaken because the worst thing that could happen absolutely did happen the next day. I woke up to find my top role wasn't there. Lucas was given the administrative role, and Travis, Pony, or even the owner of the server would not respond to any of my messages related to this. Travis and Pony then took credit for making the entire server when the server was finally announced. And once again, I was suddenly a nobody nobody, I broke into this massive argument with Pony, Travis, and Lucas because they stole my credit and my roles. As a result, they banned me from all the mutual servers that we had. Server 1, Server 2, all of it. I was taken from everything. I felt broken, and I didn't even think this would happen. I uninstalled Discord because there was no point in keeping it. But little did I know that revenge would be right around the corner. 7 months later, and I'm still not on Discord. But after I got a new device for a gift, I decided to take my revenge on them. I had to wait because they had the IP of my old device, so they could know from any account that it was me on an alternate account. So after receiving the new device, I made a new account, and I ended up entering this new server and talked to everyone. And honestly, most of the things had changed. I made myself a fake personality, I gave myself a fake birthday, and I even gave myself a fake full name. Later on, I spent 1.5 months gaining their trust. I made another server on the side, and I filled it with proof of their activities. And I caught them red-handed participating in piracy and some other stuff, but the owner didn't know about any of this, as he very rarely visited this server. I spent another 15 days trying to get mod, and you know what? I ended up getting it. After that, I soon arranged events on the server for which they promoted me into a manager. Everything was slowly lining up exactly how I would want it to go, because later on I also became an admin. So now I had the golden opportunity as I got in touch with the owner of the new server, the one that I was approached about specifically, the one that I had worked on so hard just to try and get it up and running, the one where my credit was taken away and I was banned from. I talked to this owner and I told him exactly what was going on. I told him about the piracy that was happening on his server, and I also told him about all the other nefarious activities that they've been going into. I then sent him proof that I had been gathering, and this owner told me to take whatever action necessary to get them out of the server. So, in a beautiful fit of revenge, Pony, Travis, and Lucas were all removed and banned from that server. And to top it all off, the owner of the original server where they bullied me had been deleted. So now they didn't have anywhere left to go. And to this day, they still don't know that I'm the same guy that they used to bully. But it begs the question, am I the jerk for going to such lengths just to get revenge on these guys for treating me so poorly for so long? I don't think you're the jerk in this situation. They were legitimately doing something wrong, and they were just all around really nasty people. I'm truly surprised that you didn't just make your own account sooner and invite your own friends over to your server. It's really unfair for them to treat you like that, and I don't blame you for being upset and deciding to take action. Because at the end of the day, they got exactly what was coming to them. Because people like that shouldn't expect to treat people like garbage and think for a second that they can get away with it. Am I the jerk for choosing not to leave a tip for the first time in my life? So this happened today. I'm a server at a busy downtown restaurant, and I usually have time to make some coffee at home before work. Yeah, I could drink the coffee at work, but I like what I have at home a lot better than what we have at the restaurant. It's just a personal preference. It's what got me through undergrad alive. So the brand I have at home forever has my allegiance. Today, making a fresh pot at home just wasn't going to happen because I slightly mismanaged my time, had to do a company meeting thing with some higher ups, and also squeeze in a vet visit for my new kitten before work. Needless to say, time got a little tight, so I ended up heading into my shift entirely uncaffeinated, which is no worries. While I don't particularly love energy drinks, I figured I'd just pop across the street and grab a yerba mate at the corner store. I do so, and when I check out, it's with one of those mini iPads with a card reader. I get my yerba and a pack of smokes for after work, and when I put my card into the reader, it automatically prompts me to leave either 15, 20, or 25% tip. Now, I'm almost 36 years old, and my income has been primarily dependent upon tips for basically the entirety of my adult life. I understand this, and I strive to pay it forward. I start at 40% in a full service setting and only go down if you mess up colossally. But even then, it literally takes outright abuse for me to go anywhere below 25%. I tip 20% on takeout, and I tip 25% on delivery. I mean, I even almost always throw a person working the window at Taco Bell or Cookout a 5 just for being open when I want to eat some garbage after work. This was the first time and the only time in my entire life where my whole being went, "What, are you kidding me?" when being asked to give a tip. Now, thankfully, the guy working the register sighed and reached over to hit the custom tip button and then hit 0. He looked at me and sighed, "Sorry about that. We just got this like 2 days ago, and the owners haven't figured out how to disable that step yet." I just gave out a shrug and said, "Nah, it's all good, man." But even with that in mind, boy did I get pissed off for a second. Because for a second there, I honestly thought that this this bodega had the audacity to ask for a tip just for ringing up a yerba mate and a pack of smokes. So yeah, technically that's the only time I've ever been given the option to leave a tip and was totally fine with it being 0. I'm with the original poster on this one. I absolutely will not give a tip if it's just the cashier doing their job. Like, there's literally no point. If someone delivered food to me, or if they had somehow been serving me when I came into their restaurant, that's a whole nother situation. But for just getting a simple order at a convenience store, there's no way I'm leaving a tip for that. Sorry, that's just not happening in my opinion. And worst of all, some of these places can then guilt trip you if you don't leave a tip. So in my opinion, the original poster is not a jerk, because I would have done the exact same thing. But what do you think? Leave a comment down below. Do you give a tip to every person that you see who does customer service? Or are you more selective, kind of like the original poster? Let us know down below. An entitled Karen tries to get my mom kicked out of Disney World, claiming that the service dog she has with her is fake, and that she is faking her disability. Here's what happened. So here's a little bit of background information. My mom has anxiety issues, so to help with that, we got a dog, a tiny little Maltese, and he is the cutest little angel you'll ever see. Now this Maltese is also a service dog, so he can go anywhere that my mom goes. But you can believe that a lot of people ask questions about him because he is so small, and most service dogs are typically huge German shepherds. And no, we are not cheating the system. My mom really just does not do well in crowds, so we do need this dog to help her in her day-to-day activities. So to set the scene, we just got into Disney World, and we're in the France Epcot Pavilion, and we are all having a really good time, even my mom. But all that changes once the entitled Karen shows up, and all the while, my dog starts to growl. It's like he knows what's about to happen. This entitled Karen walks up and says, "What a nice dog." My mom gets startled by her, but she composes herself and says, "Oh, why thank you." But before she could go any further, this entitled Karen cut her off and said, "How were you able to get into the park?" My mom looked at this lady confused, not sure what she was referring to, but then she caught on and said, he's a service dog. And when this entitled Karen heard this, she went in on my mom. She said, "Stop lying. A dog that size can't possibly be a service animal." And at this point, this entitled Karen got really aggressive. So I stepped in and told this lady to back off. This Karen responded by saying, "How dare you insult me like that? I had to leave my poor dog at home while you forge whatever papers you need to cheat the system." And while this entitled Karen is saying this, I'm just thinking to myself, how dumb can this lady get? You can't forge documents like that. My mom looks at her and says, "Look, we're just trying to have a good time at Disney World. Please leave us alone." But this entitled Karen is not having it, because that's when she freaks out. She says, "That's it. I'm tired of you. I'm gonna call security." And at this point, I was done with this entitled Karen. So I said to her, "Go ahead. I'm tired of you harassing us." Thankfully, there was a cast member nearby, and she overheard all that was going on. She came up to see if there was any kind of problem, but this entitled Karen jumps in and claims that my mom is faking a disability just so she can get her dog into Disney World. She then demands that we get kicked out of the park. But here's where things take an interesting twist, because my family knows this cast member that just came up to us, and that's all because my sister is in the Disney College program, and she works at a Journey into Imagination. So the cast member puts 2 and 2 together and calmly says, "Ma'am, this lady's dog is none of your business. And if it were, I know for a fact that he is a real service dog." After hearing this, the entitled Karen is fuming and on the verge of hyperventilating. So at that point, she demands to see a manager. The cast member responds by saying, "Ma'am, I'm the coordinator of this ride, and if you keep this up, I will call security to have them kick you out of the park." Thankfully and finally, this entitled Karen realizes that she won't win this argument. So she huffs and puffs and storms off, just like the entitled typical Karen that she really is. What a lucky turn of events. The chances of the cast member being somebody that you know personally is a wonderful stroke of luck, because I can only imagine the weird tale this entitled Karen would tell just to try and get you and your family in trouble. So good for you for standing up for your mom and not allowing this person to walk all over her. And hopefully next time this entitled Karen will learn that you can't treat people like this and expect to get away with it. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my sister's friend that the cat she gave me to my family and I isn't hers anymore? Here's what happened. It all started on a normal Sunday night. Football, family, and fun were in the works. While I was watching a game, my sister knocks on my door, and considering how annoying my sister usually was with me, I didn't want to hear anything she had to say. Eventually, I caved, relieved, and I went to check what she wanted. Thank goodness I did, because I was very pleasantly surprised to see that she was holding a tiny cat in her arms. She was so adorable. We named her Luna because that was the name that the previous owner had given her. She was very playful, and even though for the first little bit of time, her and my other cat, Alex, kept fighting, they eventually got along. Enter my sister's friend. To be respectful, we'll call her Miley. That's not her real name. Miley was the one who gave us the cat and was one of my sister's better friends. Well, kind of. So the next night, on my sister's birthday, she continuously takes Luna and Alex outside to show her off to her friends. And before you know it, both cats end up being lost. I go in on my sister and her friends for losing our two cats. Like, no, I was really angry. I'm a huge cat person, and knowing that they may have run away made me very sad. But thankfully, the two little munchkins came back. I asked Miley how she lost Luna, and then proceeded to get upset when I referred to Luna as our cat. She started to talk about how it was her cat, and the only reason that she couldn't keep it was because of the fact that she had 3 pit bulls in her house, and she didn't want Luna to get hurt. So I apologized to her for yelling, and then I tell her that she's allowed to see Luna whenever she wants. Well, fast forward to that following Friday, my sister takes Luna out again and goes somewhere with Miley and another one of my friends. Meanwhile, I go to the store for my dad, and when I get back, I'm hoping to see Luna back in the house. As you would guess, I was severely mistaken. After about another 10 to 15 minutes that go by, I see Miley and my friend, with Luna being in Miley's arms. My sister was nowhere in sight, and now at this point, I'm upset. I told Miley to put Luna back in the house because I don't want Luna to get lost and then run away. And wouldn't you know it, she talks about how it's her cat, how she had no choice but to give her away. And now I'm just really angry. I find it within me to remain calm, and I proceed to tell Miley that Luna was not hers anymore, since we were the ones who were feeding it, cleaning out the box, and loving it like a newborn baby. Luna eventually goes back inside and starts to relax. Miley was very upset with me. I tell her that she's still allowed to see Luna whenever she wants to, and tried to make her feel better. 1 month later, Luna is living a happy life. My family and I take good care of her, and Miley comes over most days to see Luna. Her and Alex play together all the time, but this still begs the question, am I the jerk for telling my sister's friend that the cat she gave to my family and I wasn't hers anymore? You are absolutely not the jerk. Sure, the cat was theirs to begin with, but they gave it up, and you are the one taking care of it. You're cleaning its box, you're loving it, you're feeding it, and you're honestly stepping up to the plate and taking care of this cat. So that, in my opinion, definitely means that you own this cat. It's yours, and it's not your friend Miley's. And it's not fair for her to assume, oh, it's my cat, I can do what I want. If it was really her cat, she would still have it. Instead, she shipped it off to you. So now she's treating you like a babysitting service with some kind of ownership over it. But in my opinion, that's just wrong. So good for you for putting your foot down and saying, sorry, this cat is not yours anymore. Because clearly, you are way more responsible with that cat than Miley ever was. And that, in my opinion, is the mark of a good owner. An entitled customer gets aggressive with me and calls me horrible names while harassing me because I'm not from his country. So as a result, I end up kicking him out of the restaurant that I work at. Here's what happened. So even though I'm young, I managed to get a job as a server at a restaurant in my city center a few months ago. I live in England now, but I am not originally English. I moved with my family when I was just 10 years old. So on this one night, I was given the pleasure of looking after a family of 6 people. There was a man and a woman who I think was his fiancé and 4 kids. As usual, I came over and spoke my piece, saying my name and that I would be taking care of them and so on. But I didn't even get to finish because this man stopped me to ask me where I'm from. I get this question a lot, so I told him that I'm originally from Finland. He said to me, well, you are going to be easy to understand, aren't you, pal? Naturally, I asked him what he meant by that, and he got up and said straight into my ear, I thought waiters in England were meant to understand English, pal. And I honestly could not believe he was acting like that. I left for a few minutes to let them decide what drinks they wanted, but also just to try and digest what he just said. It was quite busy, so to save time, I decided that I would take main orders too. When it got round to this woman, who was a lot nicer than the man, she asked me for my recommendations. I did my best to tell her, except this man kept asking random questions as soon as I said anything, so it lasted so much longer than it needed to. I brought them their main courses maybe half an hour later. About 5 minutes afterwards, I came back round to ask if everything was okay. This man put his hand out in front of me to stop me, stared at me and said, no, friend, it isn't. My lasagna is cold, like Finland in the winter. And after he said that, I just apologized apologized and took it away. Not even 5 minutes later, I brought him a new lasagna, which had been checked by multiple people who all confirmed that it was hot. But when I brought the man his food, the first thing he did was stick his finger through the lasagna, grab my hand, and cover my hand in it. He then said, "Do you see? Cold like the Finnish winter. Sort it out." That night was the first time that I kicked anybody out of the restaurant. I was so annoyed with him that I told him to gather his things and get out. He stood up, got in my face, and we got into an argument about it. I tried to keep things down so we didn't disturb anybody else. Eventually, the woman managed to get him to leave. On his way out, he gave me the finger, and I think he might have said something else, but I did not hear it, thankfully. Some people can honestly just be horrible. That guy was such a jerk. Not only was he being weird about the fact that you're from Finland, but it's like he almost came into that restaurant ready to have a fight. I mean, people like that drive me nuts. You have nothing to prove and you're just being weird. So good for you for standing up for yourself and not taking this lying down, because nobody should ever be treated like that regardless of where you come from. My boyfriend is not tall enough to my liking, and I honestly wish there was such a bigger height difference between the two of us, and I don't know what to do. So I'm a 24-year-old female and I'm 5'6", and my boyfriend is 5'10". So there's about 4 inches between us, and I hate it. I've always wished I was shorter, and now I'm with someone who I'm barely shorter than, and there's nothing I could do about it. I just want to feel small and dainty and cute, but I don't feel like that at all with him usually. I feel like everywhere I look, I see couples where the girl is so much shorter, and it's just making me increasingly frustrated. I don't know how to get over it. It also doesn't help that he seems to not really care, so he often slouches, and in photos he leans down a bit, making it look like there's only like 2 to 3 inches between us. Granted, it's good that he doesn't seem to mind, but at the same time, I can't help but feel that he's doing it on purpose. His last girlfriend was a whole head shorter than him, and it makes me feel extremely insecure because I just feel like he probably used to think she was cute for being so short, and he can't think that way because I'm too tall. I know I should just be happy that he's taller than me at all, but it also bugs me that when I wear heels, we're the same height. I see girls wearing 4 to 5 inch heels and still so much shorter than their boyfriend, and it makes me feel so incredibly jealous. I feel like I would do anything to even just be like 5'4", and it literally makes me so upset that there's nothing I can do about it at all, and I just have to live with this. I know some people might think I'm crazy for this, but I really like feeling small, and I like who I'm with to be so much bigger than me, and that's never going to happen here. I feel like it doesn't help that I'm also older than him, and I'm a bit chubby, whereas he's kinda skinny. This is someone I want to be with forever, so I don't want to break up over me being insecure about something that shouldn't matter. How do I get over this? I wish there was just a button that I could press that would make me stop caring, because I've been trying really hard the past couple of months to not care, and sometimes I feel like I don't, but then I keep going back to caring again. What should I do? This is a really strange situation. I mean, I've definitely heard that some women have a preference where they really want their boyfriend to be bigger than them, but in my opinion, this is taking it to the extreme. Like, you're obsessing over such a small detail about someone that you're supposed to love, right? You and your boyfriend cannot change your height. What you have is what you got. It is what it is. So there's honestly not much you can do in this department physically, and this doesn't sound like this is an issue for your boyfriend at all. He still loves you and wants to be with you from the sounds of it, but you on the other hand are thinking about breaking up with him, and that honestly sounds like a terrible decision. Like, you're literally breaking up with him because he's not tall enough. Like, what is going on? This is someone you're considering to get married to, but you're quite literally letting your insecurities dictate whether you can or cannot love your boyfriend. So hopefully you can get this figured out, because this definitely sounds like this is a you problem on your end, and the sooner you can get over the fact that you're not as short as you would like to be, the sooner you can get back to loving your boyfriend in the way that I'm sure he loves you. I just found out that my wife has been cheating on me with one of her friends, and I honestly don't know what to do. My wife and I have been struggling for some time. We never made a lot of money, and between the two of us, we're pulling in about $80,000 a year. We are very behind on our bills as well. Collection agencies call our phones constantly. We can barely afford to keep the lights on, pay our rent, and keep our kids fed and clothed. My wife handles the finances, and I trust her to make payments that we can. Yesterday, my team got a performance bonus at work, and I was given $500. I decided to log in and put it towards our outstanding balance on the electric bill. When I logged in though, I saw no balance owed. This seems strange, so I looked at payment history, and I saw random payments for between $50 to $300 all over the past 3 months that wiped out the balance completely. I know we didn't have that kind of money to spare, so as much as I hate this, I went through my wife's phone while she was sleeping, and it was not good. I saw messages between her and a friend of hers showing that they had been spending some quality time while at work, if you know what I mean. And right when I saw that, I absolutely lost it, and I started screaming at her. She woke up and looked like a deer in the headlights and started crying. She told me she did it for us, and I asked her what she was talking about. She said that she had asked her friend from work for a loan to pay off some creditors. They were friends before we met, but they never dated, just kissed a few times. He said that he knew that she couldn't pay it back, so as payment, he requested that she send him some really sketchy photos, and if she did that, he would help her out. Pretty soon, this escalated to straight up cheating. She swears that she didn't want to, but she saw it as the only way that we'd ever get out from under this. I told her I was going to contact his wife, and she begged me not to. She admitted to me that she was the one who offered to take it to a physical level when he would only give her so much for photos. He said he loved his wife and he wasn't interested. She pushed it until he agreed, and he was so afraid of his marriage blowing up. Eventually, I couldn't even untangle all the details with this story, and I was so upset. So I packed a bag with my clothes and I left. I drove my truck to a hotel parking lot and I slept there. I'm at work now, but I just feel numb inside. I have no family here. My son and my daughter are my life, and my whole world is falling apart. I told a coworker what was going on, and he made a joke about me renting my wife out just to pay the bills. I can't think straight, I'm so angry. I want to scream, cry, and vomit all at the same time. What should I do? This is horrible, because I'm pretty sure your wife is lying. There are so many different ways somebody could try and pay for these bills without resorting to some kind of lady of the night status. This is crazy to me. She could have picked up an extra job. She could have picked up some nighttime work. She could have done a lot of different things, but instead, she decided to spend some quality time with a coworker. And what kind of absolute garbage human being is he to not only suggest that scandalous photos could be payment for what he's gonna pay her, but also to then escalate this to a level where everybody's marriages are now in jeopardy. I mean, what a garbage human being. But in that same vein of thought, your wife went along with it. She's the one that initiated a lot of this, and I would not take that sitting down. So in my opinion, it's time to get your stuff in order. Your wife straight up cheated on you for $500 to pay for the electric bill balance. And I think regardless of what you decide to do, you need to remember that moving forward. $500 was more important than your marriage. So I don't blame you for being upset, and I don't blame you for being angry. If I was in your shoes, I'd be pretty upset too. But hopefully it all works out, regardless of what you decide to do, because you have kids involved with this, and I can only imagine the nightmare they're gonna have to deal with regarding this situation. My coworker just told me that he loves me, and I'm really confused, and I honestly don't know what to do. A very strange thing happened to me yesterday that I don't know how to deal with. Our work team is absolutely great, and I suppose I can say we're friends too. We hang out outside of work a lot. There are 7 of us in total, and we're about the same age. Yesterday, we went for drinks after work, and suddenly it was after midnight, and by the end of the night, there were only 3 of us left. We had maybe 1 too many drinks, and we're discussing various things, including relationships, and I honestly was having a really good time. But suddenly, our coworker, who's about 34, started to say that he's having second doubts about his girlfriend of 10 years, and he was visibly upset. We encouraged him to confide to us, and then he said something that I absolutely did not expect, basically dropping a bomb on this conversation. He turned to me and he said that he had fallen in love with me, and you know what? This was completely out of the blue, so I was obviously taken aback. For context, I also have a boyfriend that I love. We live together, and my coworker actively knows that. I think he regretted immediately that he said it because he started to apologize like 5 minutes after. Today, we have not seen each other, and he hasn't written me anything. I feel like garbage because I care about him as a friend, and I really care about my job, especially the good relationships within the team. Now I'm freaking out about destroying them. The other thing that I'm scared of is that eventually I will be left with no other choice than to give notice if the atmosphere at work becomes too suffocating. I honestly can't believe that this is happening. Just to clarify, at work, he's the deputy director and kind of indispensable at the company. When it comes to me and my employment, I definitely could leave and there wouldn't be much change. We're going to see each other on Tuesday, so I have 4 days to think about what I'm going to say to him or how I'm going to act. I'm assuming that we'll just act like nothing happened, but I don't know. It seems somehow very toxic overall. I don't know what to do, and I'm honestly at such a loss. I think you're definitely jumping to a lot of extremes here, because I don't think you've destroyed anything. You haven't done anything wrong. He's the one that should probably be freaking out, if anything. He just just made things incredibly awkward between himself and the rest of his coworkers because he confessed his love to you, and it doesn't matter that he was slightly under the influence. He said it out loud and straight to you, and that's just incredibly awkward. In my opinion, pursuing a work relationship of any kind had better be absolutely perfect, otherwise it's just not worth it. But also, this guy knew that you have a boyfriend. Like, he knows that you live with him and you have a long-lasting relationship. So for him to suddenly have the courage to say this is just incredibly toxic in my opinion. Not only because he knows that you're in a relationship, but also he himself is in a 10-year relationship. I think he needs to turn around and work on his own relationship before shopping around with one of his coworkers that maybe he just has a workplace crush on, which is a lot different than having some kind of undying love. So in my opinion, you haven't done anything wrong. He's the one that should be worried. And if I was in your shoes, I would just act normal. You didn't do anything wrong, and I don't think you should be the one to quit just because he made things awkward. I think if anything, just keep it professional. If he mentions the situation, just be like, hey, I want to put this behind us, and I definitely want to move on. Because you're both in relationships and you have no interest in dating this guy. You could even talk to the friend who is also there with you and maybe discuss it with them, see if they know what to do. But regardless, I just would not jump to the conclusion that you need to quit because this job's important to you. You need to make rent, you need to pay for your bills, all that stuff. And I wouldn't let some weird higher up who confessed his love to you all because his relationship is failing keep you from retaining your job and living your life. An entitled Karen and her boyfriend make fun of my mother because of her physical handicap, causing her to cry in front of everybody. But I stepped in and I got revenge. Here's what happened. So yesterday, my family and I went out for a nice dinner and a trip to the movies. This is something we rarely do since we live moderately far apart and we all work our own jobs. Our party included my dad, my mom, my sister, and myself. Everything was pretty chill and we were enjoying ourselves. The food was nice and the movie was kind of funny, but afterwards, nobody was expecting what awaited us moments later. When the movie ended, we started walking out of our row towards the exit. This cinema is rather small, so there was only one door. When I looked back up to see where the rest of my family was, I saw that my mother was arguing with a couple. The man was a balding middle-aged snob with thick glasses and an oily face, and the woman was dressed up in a black dress with a golden necklace and had a fake blonde Karen haircut. Both of them had this unbearably upper-classy I'm better than you feel oozing out of them. It was pretty clear that they didn't want to get up to let my mother pass through. Now, you see, my mom has a medical problem with her knee. She wanted to pass the row in this specific direction. That way she doesn't have to huddle through the whole length of the row just to get out. She tried to explain this to this entitled Karen, but instead of being understandable and reasonable, she ended up just making fun of her and taunting her. She even said, "Oh, just climb over me," only to then moments later say, "No, I can't let you pass. I want to see the credits." After a while of these two going back and forth arguing, this entitled Karen put her feet up on the top of the seat, right in front of my mother to block my mother from going this way. At this point, my mom was all worked up and she started crying. She passed by me by the exit, taking the long way around, despite her knee giving her problems. Now, I don't take disrespect lightly, and I knew that if I didn't act now, this scene would follow me for some weeks. I remembered that I still had my water bottle with me, and it was filled to the brim. So I took it out, walked back to where the couple was sitting, and gave this entitled Karen and her boyfriend a refreshing shower, directly onto their bellies and laps. They clearly saw me coming and looked at me all smug and victorious. That is, up until the water hit them in their lap. This entitled Karen and her boyfriend looked shocked and had this "how could you" look on their face. Her boyfriend, who also yelled at my mom previously, confronted me in a quiet and shaky voice saying, "Why did you do that? You can't do that." Because apparently, this entitled Karen and her boyfriend never learned that their actions have consequences. As I'm turning to leave, this Karen goes into full rage mode, and that's when she does something that is absolutely unbelievable. And to this day, I'm honestly still shocked about what happened. It was at this point that she started climbing over her boyfriend and the seats just to get to me. Her boyfriend yelled at her saying, "Please, leave it as it is. Don't do it." And just as I went through the exit, I realized that she made her way right behind me. I turned and she was standing there with her fists in the air, like 2 steps apart from me. I looked at her and we both basically got in an argument right there, with this Karen ready to square off against me. Now, as a side note, I'm a 23-year-old guy, I'm fairly muscular, and I'm big into fighting sports. I've been training both Wing Chun and Muay Thai for quite a while now, since it's fun and it adds to my overall fitness. Don't worry, I didn't obliterate this Karen. I also didn't really attack her. I just assumed my fighting stance and took a step forward and straight up asked her if this is really what she wanted. The entitled Karen was still there in all her freshly soaked glory, seething with rage. Now at this point, I kind of wish that she would try something, just so I can use some kind of self-defense against her. But she just kind of stared at me and then tried to punch me, but she missed completely. So I established some distance and I stared her down once again. The next thing I know, this entitled Karen ran back into the cinema and my sister and my mother were getting in my way to end the situation. The entitled Karen was hiding behind some people in the cinema. Eventually, her balding middle-aged boyfriend walked to the exit, saw me and went wide-eyed again, completely overwhelmed with this situation. We then turned and left. A very kind woman reassured us that this entitled Karen acted weird and uncontrolled, and she suspected that some kind of illegal substance was probably involved with her behavior. Well, after that, we got a good story out of our family night, and the only thing this entitled Karen and her boyfriend got out of this were wet clothes and dirty looks. And you know what? I think that's a fair deal. How obnoxious of these people to act that way. While I definitely would not have poured water on those people that were acting like that if that was my mother, I most definitely would have gone up there and said something, because that's just inappropriate. You don't mock somebody and put them down simply because they have some kind of physical disability. That's really unfair and that's really gross. So hopefully they learn their lesson. And next time someone wants to pass them in the movie theater, they should just be a good person and let them pass. Otherwise, they just might get more water poured on them. I accidentally gave my neighbor the wrong phone number, and I feel so awkward about correcting it, I honestly don't know what to do. I'm a 22-year-old female, and I recently moved into a new apartment, and my upstairs neighbor and I recently got introduced because I got a new kitten, and it was screaming throughout the night. So I went upstairs to ask if he could hear her. I didn't want to disrupt my new neighbors, so I introduced myself, and we got to talking a little bit. Now, when we get home from work, which is usually around the same time, we would sit and chat and just try to get to know each other. A few days ago, I was a couple beers into the night, and I decided to write my number down on a sticky note and go upstairs and hand it to him. I tested my handwriting out on one, scrapped it, and wrote it down again. I went upstairs, handed it to him, and he seemed really taken back, but still was very interested in hanging out. I was anxious but excited, because it seems we have a lot in common from our short talks. Anyways, it has been a few days, and still no text from him. It was at that point that I was starting to worry that I might have creeped him out a little bit, and that's when I looked down at my first draft of the note that I had written him, and I'm pretty sure I wrote my freaking phone number wrong. In my defense though, I have 3 phones, 2 for work and a new number for personal reasons. I am so flustered, and I wonder if I wrote down the wrong one on the second draft that I handed to him. Do I go upstairs and apologize? I'm worried I might have gotten it right, and he just hasn't texted me yet. I don't want to come off as a creep, but it would also be nice to get to know him, even just as a friend. He was incredibly receptive to me giving him my number, so I don't know why he would be waiting to text me. I could also wait until I run into him again, but we don't see each other that often, and the last time we spoke, I gave him my number. Another option is to write the correct number down and post it on his door. Like I said, I don't want to be weird if I actually got it right. This is such a tricky situation, and I honestly don't know what to do. This is actually really funny, because I can totally see this happening. I can see you absolutely giving him the wrong number by accident, or at least second guessing your judgment when you're just a little impaired. So honestly, I don't think it's totally out of the ordinary to go up to his house and be like, hey, it's me again. I gave you my number the other night, but I have 3 phone numbers, and I'm pretty sure I gave you the wrong number. Here's the correct number. And then you just give him the correct number that you want to give him. And here's the best part. If it is still the number that you gave him, then it's all good. But at least you can go about this in such a way where you're trying to correct a potential mistake, which I think is totally reasonable. And who knows, maybe he has been trying to text you and get in contact with you in some way, but he hasn't been able to get through because your phone number is wrong. There's always a chance that you did get it wrong, and he has the wrong number, so that's why he's not texting you. So I say give it a shot, because honestly, who cares? You're both adults, you're both working for a living, and I highly doubt he has any time to really think about the logistics of you giving him his number. And the best part about it is that once you've given him the actual number and you've at least corrected a potential mistake, the ball is then in his court. So if he does text you or call you, then you know he's interested. But if he doesn't reach out, then that could be your sign, and you can move on and find other friends. But overall, this is honestly just a very hilarious situation to be stuck in, and hopefully it all works out. My new boyfriend seems to have moved in with me, and now I'm trying to figure out how to get him to leave. I'm honestly at a loss, and I don't know what to do. I've known my former client, who turned into my friend, for several years. He has always lived in another state, so I would talk to him and text message him several times a week, but I would only see him in person once or twice a year at professional conferences. He got divorced, or so he said, 2 years ago, and said that he moved out of their home into an apartment. Well, about 2 months ago, he came to visit me and ended up attending an event with me, and as a result, we ended up becoming romantically involved. He flew back home after a few days and then said he wanted to see me again. So we traveled together and had a great time, but I could tell that he was being very stingy on paying for things, which seemed weird for someone who claims to have a very successful business. Anyway, he recently confessed to me after I made the discovery that he never moved out of his home from his marriage and was living with his ex because he was trying to save money, mostly because he was just broke. He ended up telling me he was coming to visit me and was going to stay for as long as I wanted him to. Now, as a side note, I have a 16-year-old son 50% of the time, but as often is the case with teenagers, he is a bit sporadic with his schedule due to sports, and I have a good relationship with his father, so we aren't very specific on custody times. We let our son do whatever works best for him. Well, when my boyfriend flew here, I told him that I wasn't comfortable with my son being home and having my boyfriend in the house sleeping in the same bed as me. He said, okay, I understand. He then offered and said, oh, well, maybe you can just say I'm taking the couch. Now, my home is only a 2-bedroom, so I said no, my son is too smart for that. So I told him that I would need him to go to a hotel that evening, but the kicker is that he would have me pay for the hotel. He thanked me profusely, but I'm a bit in shock here. So he flies to my town for a probationary period, as he puts it, to see if I will allow him to move in, and literally had me pay for his hotel when I told him he couldn't sleep there because my son takes priority. Fortunately, my son had practice last night and didn't come to my house, but that won't be the case tonight. So now I have to pay for my boyfriend to go to a hotel again? He doesn't even have a car because he told me that he sold his when he left town. I feel a bit shocked, mainly because I was very much into my boyfriend, and now I feel like I'm getting swindled or something like that. What should I do? I think you need to trust your gut on this one. This guy does not sound like he's being honest, and if anything, it definitely sounds like he's trying to move in. He has nowhere to go, he has no money, his business is failing, he even sold his car before he came there. Like, why would he do that? Also, the original poster's boyfriend is 45 years old. That's old enough to know how to figure things out, and that should be old enough where you can pay for a hotel for a night. So if anything, I would definitely have my guard up, because the way he's acting is super sketchy, and I think if you just put your foot down and say, no, I'm not doing this for you, and set some very clear boundaries with this guy, it will probably go a really long way, because otherwise, I think you're going to be stuck with this guy, and I honestly don't think that would be good for you or your son. My girlfriend of 4 years broke up with me because she thinks I'm cheap, and I honestly don't know what to do. I've been dating my girlfriend for 4 years now. We argue a lot, at least once a month, but I do love her, and I want to spend the rest of my life with her. So we had a big argument the other day. She told me that a guy should at least give his girlfriend a gift of $1,000 just to show how much he really cares about her. I told her that I completely disagree, and materialistic items should mean nothing in the relationship. She then said, if we date for 10 years, you're telling me that you wouldn't get me something for just $1,000? And so again, I asked her why she putting so much emphasis on materialistic values. She then said that I was being cheap and that I'm glad I showed her my true colors. She also said she finds me worthless and told me that I make her feel worthless and like an absolute piece of garbage because of my response to what she said. So I then asked her if I gave her a $3,000 item for our 5-year anniversary, would she love me more? She hesitated, and then she said something that absolutely blew my mind. She said, yes, because it shows that you care to shell out that much for me. I told her, but how does this strengthen our relationship? How does this fit into our goal? I also told her if I got you a gift for that much money, chances are in a few weeks we are arguing about something entirely different, and you would tell me not to guilt trip you because I bought you something expensive. I told her, okay, well that's not me, and I don't expect something of a high price. For reference, I barely make a steady income right now, and I still am trying to find a new place to move into. But after I said that, she got mad at me, and she said, when I ask you for nothing, you will throw this in my face. You make me feel like garbage. And when she said that, I was just beyond confused. I let her vent, and then she actually said that I show her no respect. She also said I don't appreciate her as a person, and told me to go date other women because she will start looking for other men. So she essentially just ended our relationship over that. I never even responded back because when she gets this angry, no rational conversation is ever going to happen. I thought letting her vent was the right move here. We've had big arguments before, and when she tells me that she needs space, I back away. But then she just keeps going and going, which now has obviously led to her just breaking up with me. I'm honestly at a loss on what to do you, and I'm beyond heartbroken. What should I do? This is honestly a weird situation, because this definitely sounds like your girlfriend really does value gifts and money a lot more than she values her boyfriend. And I guarantee you that whoever she goes on to is absolutely going to get the same treatment, like 100%. So I would not be upset about her breaking up with you. This is probably a blessing in disguise. So if anything, congratulations. Don't get me wrong, I totally understand that this is a really painful situation, and none of this sounds like something that I would personally want in a relationship. But to be completely honest, she's just trying to get money out of you, and based on what you've described, she basically sees you as her personal piggy bank, and you are so much more than that. And I'm honestly surprised that you stuck around and dealt with this much as it is. So I would take her seriously. If she really wants to break up, then just let her go. Because someone who acts like this and is this obnoxious about it clearly has ulterior motives, in my opinion. And to top it all off, I don't think this was a good relationship to begin with. So maybe it's time to just move on and find somebody else. My husband's friends treated me poorly, and despite him knowing that this is bothering me, he won't stick up for me and tells me just to deal with it because he's a people pleaser and he hates confrontation. And at this point, I don't know what to do. So my husband and I have been together for 4 years and married for 1. When we first got together, he was friends with 2 girls who hated me off the bat because they had had crushes on him and he didn't reciprocate. I would receive messages and comments from fake accounts online saying that I was ugly or that I was pretty, and he only wanted me for my body because of that. We would go to events and there would be a small group of people there who would refuse to say hi or interact with me, but fully interacted with my husband. After a lot of time and passive-aggressive actions, he finally cut them out and blocked them. However, some of their friends who are mutuals with my husband continue to be cold towards me. Over the last 4 years, there have been periods of back and forth. For months, nothing will happen and things will feel great. Then suddenly, someone I don't know who is close with the 2 women will randomly view my story on Instagram without ever following me. A former friend admitted to me once that they constantly talk crap about me behind my back and gossip to me to other people. It feels like when I see these random views on my social media, it's probably because they are all hanging out together and gossiping. I have mentioned to my husband how it's weird and it makes me feel uncomfortable. My husband just shrugs it off and says to ignore it. He continues to talk to them and joke around on social media despite their treatment towards me. I'm tired of feeling disrespected like this on both fronts. I feel that my husband should stick up for me and at least call out their behavior. Something as simple as, why are you ignoring my wife when we're both right here? Or even something like, is there a reason you randomly followed then unfollowed my wife within a week? At least some acknowledgement that something passive-aggressive is happening and it's being noticed and discussed between us. I wish he would present a united front with me, but I feel very much alone in this right now. We have fought and argued about this issue many times before. Our therapist pointed out to him how it's weird behavior for these people to do this. I've told him if any of my friends were disrespectful towards him, I would take it personally as disrespect towards us. He really believes that just because this terrible behavior isn't directed at him, that he has no reason to put distance between them or call them out. I'm feeling extremely depressed today about this, and he's just ignoring me still, sitting on his computer doing nothing about it. What should I do? This is a terrible situation, because I think to some degree, your husband really is a people pleaser, but he's pleasing the wrong people. He's trying to keep the peace with these extended friends while basically ruining his marriage, which is not fair for you at all. He has no spine and he's basically a jellyfish. The way he's acting and the way he's just allowing this to happen is really disrespectful towards you, and I think you really do need to understand that. Any reasonable spouse would step in and say, hey, stop treating my spouse like garbage, because for him to just sit there and do nothing is a silent note that he's basically accepting that, and it's not fair for you at all. And I'm sure this is a constant knock at your self-esteem. It's not fair to be treated this way, so I think you really need to express again to him and make sure he understands that this is not okay for you. This makes you feel terrible and you've got depression over this. So hopefully this works out, and hopefully he's able to step up to the plate and be the man that you would want him to be, because if the roles were reversed, I'm sure you would step up to the plate and help him out in his time of need. My wife watches annoying YouTube videos for hours every night, and I don't know what to do. I work from 9 to 5. She works weekends and some weekdays. Mostly during the evening from 7 p.m., our daughter goes to sleep, and she starts watching YouTube. It's not loud, but I can hear it. I mean, I work during the day, and I hear people talking. I talk to a lot of people as well, and while I'm at work, I talk to intellectual people, and I quite enjoy it. But when I get home and the evening comes along, I would like some peace. I have a gaming PC, and I play about 1 hour a day and watch YouTube or movies for another hour. I do that that mostly on my headphones, as I like to hear it loud and immerse myself. However, as 7 p.m. kicks in, she starts watching absolute nonsense stuff, like housewives or some vlog videos about makeup, stuff like that. I understand this is probably only garbage for me, but not so for her. She loves this stuff. I am an intellectual person, and I get very frustrated whenever I hear dumb people talk, as well as when there's just nonsense being spoken about. And the stuff she watches has absolute nonsense scattered all over it. Hearing this every night for 3 to 4 hours is very annoying. I would love some peace. She sometimes watches a marathon of series, which I really don't mind and often do enjoy getting into myself. Something like a Netflix series or something along those lines. Anything with a high quality of production. But the YouTube videos that she watches, I honestly just can't stand them anymore. The worst part is she has AirPods. She could use them, but when I ask her, she just gets upset and just tells me that I need to put on my noise cancellation earphones. I can't wear that in bed, and I would love to fall asleep sometimes without anything playing around my ear. She stays up till midnight usually, and I often hear that garbage playing till that time. Also, when I go to bed early, like 9 o'clock p.m., she comes with me. I understand that it's great that your partner comes with you, but I would really enjoy some separate time in a room. The only way I can do that is to come to bed and then go back to the living room when she is already in bed. What should I do? I agree with the original poster to an extent, but I also really don't like his attitude. Like, sure, you don't like what your wife listens to on YouTube, but I'm sure she could flip the script and say that she doesn't like the games that you play and she doesn't like the videos that you watch. I mean, this definitely goes both ways, but I can't agree that when you're in bed, it's time to turn things off and go to bed. Laying in bed and watching YouTube videos with the noise on, I can completely understand would disrupt your sleep and make you feel miserable. So I would definitely say, hey, that at least has to go. And I think there might be some way to come to some kind of compromise where you can both still be happy and enjoy your time to yourself while also allowing the other person to basically do what they want. I think you just need to communicate better. And a lot of this post really only focuses on the original poster's feelings, and it kind of comes from the angle of like, well, what are you doing for me lately? And I personally feel like you need to think about your partner more. So talking this out and coming to some kind of compromise would probably go a long way. Otherwise, you might as well kiss your sleeping schedule goodbye. An entitled Karen demands to get free pretzels from our venue at a theme park, stating that her kids are starving and that because we're closed, we should just be giving them out for free. But when I tell her that she has to pay for them, she goes crazy and freaks out on me. Here's what happened. So I work at a pretty big pretzel company, but for privacy reasons, I will call it Uncle Un's. Anyway, I worked there for a year already, and this happened pretty early into my second year. This particular pretzel place was inside a small amusement park in Pennsylvania. And no, it wasn't Hershey Park, and yes, it'll be important later. So it was the last 5 minutes after my shift. So I was tired and I wanted to go home. We were busy cleaning and not paying attention to the window because normally most families would have left by this point. That is when I hear a knock on our window. So I look up and I do the one thing that I know how to do as a cashier. And I say the line that I always say. And this is where the entitled Karen comes into play. I say, "Hi, how can I help you today?" She responds by saying, "Yeah, hi. Are you closed?" I told her that we actually closed 5 minutes ago. This entitled Karen then said, "Great. Do you have any leftover pretzels?" I told her that we do, but I then asked her why does she want to know that. She then said, "Well, can I have them?" So figuring that she wanted to get some kind of last minute order, I asked her how many she wanted. And when she said she wanted 5 of them, I said, "All right, that comes down to $21.15. So in total, each pretzel's about $4 and some change." And when I told the entitled Karen the price, she just about lost it on me. She said, "What? Aren't they discounted?" I responded by saying that if she has the season pass, then it's 15% off. But apparently this was the wrong thing to say. She says, "No, you're closed, so the pretzels should be half off." And I have to be honest, at this point I just wanted to go home, and I kinda just stopped caring. I responded to her by saying, "Why do you think it should be half off?" This Karen then explains that because we're closed, that means that the pretzels are a day old and should be discounted, which is completely inaccurate. We switch out our pretzels every 30 minutes, and I tried to explain this to this lady. So she says, "Fine. Babe, do you still want them if they're full priced?" Behind her stood a very tired looking husband, and he said that he did not care and he just wanted to hurry up and go home. So then this entitled Karen tries to pull a fast one, and she says, "Okay, whatever. We'll just get it with the 15% off. We can do that, right?" I then reminded her that you need the season pass to get the 15% off, and if you have it, I've got no problem doing that. Again, she freaked out and said, "No, I should get the 15% off because you're closed." I explained to her that, "Ma'am, that's that's not how it works. I stated that yes, we are closed, so we are no longer selling pretzels. I'm only offering them to you because my boss wants as many sold as possible. This entitled Karen then must have thought that she had caught me in my word somehow, because she responded by saying, "See, you can't sell them, so they are free." So I responded by saying, "No, they are not free, ma'am. I will in fact be taking them home and eating them for dinner." At this point, I was too tired to care, as I had just worked a 5-hour shift. I know that's not a lot, but it was 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and I had to deal with kids the entire time. The entitled Karen shot back very angrily by saying, "You don't need them. My kids are hungry." And when she said that, I said, "Okay, well maybe you should buy them some food." But the entitled Karen was not getting it. She demanded and insisted that these pretzels were free. So I told her that yes, for me they were free, but for you, a paying customer, they're $4.23. Thankfully, one of her kids walked up and asked their mom if they could just go home now. The entitled Karen had one last fit of rage and started screaming something that no one but dogs could understand, and then eventually she thankfully left. Imagine getting in a fight over pretzels. How stupid and entitled do you have to be? I mean, this lady clearly was trying to work the system pretty hard. She went from trying to get a 15% discount to then trying to get them half off to then demanding that she should just have them for free. And you can bet that she only did this because they were closing, and she was probably just trying to pressure this worker into caving to her demands. And that's just not fair for someone who's probably just working a summer job trying to make ends meet. So hopefully this entitled Karen can pick her battles a little bit more, because freaking out over pretzels at a theme park definitely seems like a waste of time and energy. I found out that my boyfriend has been cheating on me, and I don't know how to confront him about this or what to do. My boyfriend and I are both 22 years old, and our 3-year anniversary is in about a week. Our relationship has been pretty rocky for most of the duration. I moved away from home to be with him. I have bad anxiety and depression, so it made doing things around the house like chores really difficult a lot of the time, because I was sad about not having my family around. And on top of that, I lost a couple of jobs, my mom got cancer, among other things. I moved right when COVID started, so there was really no chance to make any friends here. I also didn't have any friends in my hometown where I came from. I have felt pretty alone the whole time, and I'm much too clingy for my boyfriend because he's all I know, but he hates it when I'm always right there asking for attention. The fact that I was so clingy caused a lot of issues, as well as me not doing enough around the house because he worked really long shifts. I tried my best, but it never felt like it was ever good enough because there was always something he'd pick out that I didn't do right. Fast forward about a year, and I caught him on Tinder, and I confronted him about it. He said that he was upset that I haven't been doing my part, and that I was too clingy, essentially suffocating him because I just wanted to be around him 24/7. I don't purposefully try and make him mad, but everything I do does. It can be anything I say that I think is normal, but honestly, everything I do upsets him, and it's really simple things too. I also have a really hard time listening, and it affects my memory quite a bit, so most of the time, I can't remember things he just said to me in arguments, or when he says, "What did I just say?" My mind honestly just goes blank, even though I was paying attention. This causes issues on a daily basis, and I've even tried explaining to him that I'm not doing it on purpose, but he just tells me that I don't care, and calls me all these horrible names in all of our arguments. Honestly, I could write a book about our relationship, and I won't cover a lot of it here, but fast forward a little bit where it really goes down. Catching him on Tinder caused major trust issues for me, and honestly made me more clingy because now I was worried about what he was doing and who he was talking to all the time. Whenever he'd go out with his friends, I'd get a little bit upset and need reassurance, which he also hated. He was always so vague and never really told me his plans anytime he would go out. I always ask him to give me updates now and then, or just to check in with me when he goes out, just so I know he's okay. Whenever I ask him that, he freaks out and calls me controlling and tells me that I'm not his mom and that I don't need to know exactly where he is all the time. So that didn't help either. But fast forward some more, and we got into some pretty big fights when we moved into a new apartment together. At one point, we broke up for about a week because of how I was acting. We got back together after that, and a couple weeks later, I found something in his pants pocket that is basically a packaging wrapper that someone would use for quality time with another woman, if you know what I mean. I then saw a week later where he's asking a lady of the night to spend some quality time with him, also if you know what I mean. And these text messages were pretty condemning, and basically all led to the fact that he has been cheating on me, and it looks like he had been doing this multiple times. All of this came up later in an argument, but it didn't really go anywhere because he said he never saw her and denied the entire thing. Fast forward some more, and we got into another really big fight over something I was saying, and he started to get physical, and our roommate had to get between him and me because he was screaming and shaking me, but it wasn't too serious because I was screaming as well. I left after that, and I tried to sleep in my car, but even after that, I accepted him back, and I accepted his apology. We're now in a new place, and we recently got into another argument, and he disappeared for the whole night, and he really wouldn't tell me what he did that night. And what I did next, I know is very wrong, but I looked at his phone and I only saw text messages of him trying to find out another club that he could go to where there were lots of women that he could interact with. And there were many more conversations with other women who were just trying to spend some quality time with him. He doesn't know that I saw those messages, and I've been acting like everything is fine at the moment. I've been really depressed lately, and I don't have any friends to talk to, so everything is just kept inside and it really hurts. I'm debating getting the number of this woman that he was chatting with and asking her some questions about my boyfriend, because clearly she might know more than me in this situation. I know I could just break up with him, and I really have been wanting to for the past year or so, but I'm scared. He is all I know, and my family is 5 hours away, and I can't move all my stuff back with my car. I'm just really scared, and I don't have anyone to talk to, and I just don't know. I love him so much, and I want to be with him, and I know he also wants to be with me too, but I just don't know why he has to do stuff like this behind my back. What should I do? The original poster in this situation needs to wake up. Their boyfriend does not love them. If he loved you, he wouldn't go to see some lady of the night over and over again. He also wouldn't have all these other condemning text messages, basically proving that yes, he was cheating on you. And that is exactly what he's doing. He is actively cheating on you. And sure, you might be afraid and you might be scared to do this, but if I was in your shoes, I would be breaking up with him immediately. The man has been physical with you, and he's been actively cheating on you. He does not love you, and this is blatantly not a safe environment for you. Your boyfriend definitely needs to become your ex-boyfriend, because his agenda does not match up with yours, and I honestly do not believe that he loves you in the slightest. My girlfriend kissed another guy 8 months ago, and despite the fact that we weren't together at the time, I still feel cheated, and I honestly don't know what to do. Let me first off say that this woman changed me as a man for the rest of my life, no matter whatever I choose to do ultimately in this situation. I really do deeply trust her as a matter of fact, and I know that everything she said to me is 100% true. We met each other in high school and quickly grew attached to each other. You have to consider the fact that both of us were never in a serious relationship, and the true feeling of love was unknown to us. Soon after meeting, we became mutual friends, and we would text each other on every occasion with no romantic feelings from both sides, even though both of us at the time knew that we both looked like a couple. Times passed and the feelings started coming in gradually. To this day, we often talk about how we felt about each other and at what time during our friendship. I did admit to falling in love with her first though, and not too long after I did, she did as well. You have to know that before that, we never experienced a feeling like this. The one you feel after falling for someone you truly know and appreciate as a person, even though we were both too anxious and overall very confused about what was even happening between the both of us. But here comes the part that really pains me. A month before we became a couple, she organizes a party, which I didn't attend, at which everyone was drunkenly playing a drinking challenge game. It turned out that she was picked to kiss her friend who happened to be a guy. For context, when we were together, he became our frequent topic of discussion because the sight of him at school made me uncomfortable. You would think that it's not a big deal, as we weren't officially in a relationship at the time, but she confessed that she had fallen for me sometime before that already. This is what really hurts the most. Because of this fact, every good memory which I remember from before that stupid party is instead a very, very painful one. We've had some arguments over the whole situation, where she claims that she wasn't taking the whole kissing thing seriously at the time, but after seeing me hurt by it, she came to really regret it, and also apologized to me multiple times, not knowing why she even did that, as she never had any feelings for the guy, and I honestly trust her on that. You might not understand, but we were both extremely confused about our status, almost all the time before actually getting together. We were already talking about our plans for the future. We are even considered to be a perfect couple by our friend groups. Well, it would be perfect if not for that one stupid kiss. It makes me sick when I even think about it. Before you say it, I consider a breakup to be the last resort. We truly do love each other. On the one hand, I don't even know what I'm really looking for here. I keep saying it to myself, that she has given me way way more than a kiss in our relationship. Sometimes though, when thinking about all of this, the stress can get the better of me. And you know what? Maybe I am in the wrong here, but who really knows? All I know is that at this very moment, I can't imagine how much garbage my life would be without her. And at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. So let me get this straight. The original poster is getting upset because their current girlfriend kissed another guy during a drinking game at a party, and this all happened before you were official. And that's what you're upset about? This is literally the most immature take I've ever seen in my life. And I'm sure your girlfriend is scratching her head like, is this guy serious? I mean, this is literally only an issue on your end. She didn't do anything wrong, and she's apologized multiple times. She is surprisingly seeing that, yeah, this is clearly a big deal despite the fact that we weren't together at the time. I think if anything, the original poster needs to hear the cold hard truth that they need to grow up and get over themselves. You were not committed as a couple, and that's honestly all that matters. So there's really no reason to try and rake your girlfriend over the coals because she honestly didn't do anything wrong. My husband left me because I suck at cooking dinner, and I honestly don't know what to do. I'm a 23-year-old female, and I've been married to my husband for 2 years. When we met, I was young, and I didn't know how to do anything. I won't lie, I've always had this horrible dream of being a doting wife, with a loving family, a house, doing all the cleaning, etc. Everything by the books. So I learned how to cook for my husband like I thought I should. I watched video after video, and tried so many things. I can cook phenomenally, at least when it comes to easy Pinterest recipes. My issue is that my husband only likes 2 things. He likes chicken wings and boxed macaroni. He will eat an entire bag of chicken wings and an entire bag of mac and cheese for dinner if I do not cook for him. Of course, I take it on myself to do all the recipe planning, and I ask him first if things sound good or not. I even try new vegetables in unique ways. Fried broccoli, for example, was really good, as well as some baked carrot fries, which are also amazing. The only issue is my husband hates it. He will, without fail, find something to complain about and not eat most of the dinners I make every night. Now, I cook, I clean, I do dishes, I take care of the cat's litter even though I'm allergic, I do laundry, I literally do all of it. I ask for nothing in exchange, except maybe, just maybe, sometimes he eats the dinners that I work so hard to prepare. He could also be a little bit more selective in how he says things. For example, he came to the table and he took a bite of our dinner, which consisted of shrimp fettuccine, Alfredo sauce, garlic bread, and an Italian salad on the side. He starts making noises like ew, to which I don't respond. Then he just loudly says, yuck, what even is this? As if it's not the dinner he specifically asked for and said that he wanted. He just keeps saying that it's off, and I honestly can't figure out how. It really is delicious. I did everything by the book, and I think it tastes great. I ended up telling him that it hurts my feelings when he acts like this, and I'm no longer going to cook any food for him. He is now on his own for meal planning and such. I'll make my own food and spare my feelings, which I know are hurt too easily as it is. After this, he left the house. He slammed the door and he won't text me back. So I'm literally here because I don't want to bother my friends and my family that lives far away. I'm honestly so hurt by this, and I don't know what to do. Your husband is being absolutely ridiculous. You worked hard on making this food, and then he's gonna act like this massive jerk and basically treat you like garbage because it's not what he likes. And I'm sure you did everything correctly. He's just being a very poor sport because he doesn't get to eat chicken and mac and cheese again for the 12th night in a row. This is all just incredibly emotionally immature, and he really should be ashamed of himself. And the fact that he stormed out after you said, okay, I just won't cook for you anymore, is a massive red flag, and it's not something I would ignore in the slightest. Because if I was in your shoes, I wouldn't cook for him anymore either, especially if this is how he's gonna act. If he's just gonna throw whatever you just made under the bus and not even give it a try, then the problem is legitimately with him. So hopefully this works out in some kind of way, and hopefully your husband learns how to cook something besides mac and cheese and chicken, because I can't imagine what that does to your body after every meal, and I can only imagine that's gonna cause problems for him in the future. My partner has a well-paying job, but always finds reasons not to work or pay her bills, and at this point I'm kind of at a loss on what to do. My partner, who's 27 years old, owes me about $1,000, which I know isn't a huge amount, and honestly I'd be happy to just forget about it, except every month it grows a little bit more. She'll be a few hundred behind on rent and bills, and won't ever pay me back fully for it. On top of this, I pay for all groceries for us and her kid. I also spend a lot of money on the herb, if you know what I mean, as we both smoke it daily, but I'm the only one paying for it. More or less, the only major bill that she pays towards is rent, which is about $1,100 a month. We've been together for nearly 2 years, but recently moved into a more expensive home together, which is when all all of this started to become a problem. We both have pretty well-paying jobs. That pretty much allows us to be schedule independent. If she were to work 5 days a week, it wouldn't be unusual for her to make $3,000 to $4,000 a month. In fact, this is exactly what her colleagues do. The problem is that she won't work. She just won't. Weeks will go by where she first needs to rest, and then she's just too stressed out. And then she'll be maybe ready to get to work, but something will derail her, and right when I think she's getting back to it, something new comes up, and she's staying home again. I understand that she doesn't enjoy the work she does, and it can be emotionally taxing on her, but usually by the third week of the month, she still won't even have half the rent saved up, and I have to accept that it's up to me to make sure that we can pay it, or we're going to risk eviction. I'm starting to feel taken advantage of. I'm starting to build up some resentment every time I see her deciding to stay home another day, as well as every time I have to liquidate some of my savings or stress about work because she won't do it. I've explained this to her multiple times. I've tried motivating her, buying her energy drinks. She's told me to help her get to work, and we've had a couple of fights and some tension over it. Multiple times we've come up with plans that she can follow that allow for plenty of rest, but still, it's never enough time at work to pay for bills and then just to save some of it. But no matter what we try, at the end of the month, she can't make rent and I have to pay her share because we're both on the lease. I don't want to break up with her. I truly love this girl, and besides her incompatibility with capitalism, she's the healthiest and most loving partner I've ever had. For example, while I may pay for groceries, she does do mostly all the cooking and cleaning. It's not like she's just being lazy all the time. She does have a busy and often stressful life, as well as having a family that uses her like a free therapist. I just want to find a way to motivate her to work enough just so that she can pay her share and be able to afford adventures and travel plans like we've been trying to save money for in the first place. What should I do? This is really disappointing, to be completely honest, because you moved into a new place with her, all with the exception that she would step up and pay her fair share, but she's absolutely not doing that. I don't know if there's some kind of depression or medical illness that's going on with your partner, but maybe it's time to go to the doctor and say, hey, I'm having trouble even going to work. What do I do? Also, where does she work where she could just not show up and still have a job? Because that's crazy to me. The original poster goes on to say that yes, his partner does indeed hate her job. But with that in mind, there's plenty of people out there who hate their job, but still do exactly what they need to do to make rent and make a living. If I was the original poster, I would have put my foot down and said enough is enough. I would stop giving her money, I would stop paying for things, and I would honestly just start looking for a new place to live. Because from the outside looking in, she's taking advantage of you. She knows for a fact that you will step up and save her when she doesn't want to work. And in my opinion, I think it's time to stop being a doormat and just say no, you need to step up and pay your fair share. Otherwise, this living condition is not going to work. An entitled crazy customer freaks out after a cashier accidentally overcharges him by $2. Things got so bad that he threatened to call the police, claiming that they were blatantly robbing him. Things got really tense and very awkward very quickly. Here's what happened. So I worked in a shop for almost 4 years before I finally quit in September of 2022. They basically sold everything. Holiday stuff, home fashion, furniture, food, pet stuff, kitchenware, bathroom supplies, candles, toiletries, you name it. This story happened in 2019, so some of the dialogue may not be completely accurate, so just bear with me. I was working the register that day, and this woman comes up to me with her receipt, saying that something came up wrong, and was kind of rude about it, saying how she came in the other day, and it was supposed to come up at a different price. At the time, registers couldn't do refunds, only customer service did, so I called someone up, and they told me that they had to do customer service, but they'll see what they can do. As we were waiting, my walkie went off, and I hear my coworker's voice come out from the other end. She said a line that makes you beyond curious upon hearing it. My coworker asked for a manager at register 8. As I hear that, a customer walks past my register towards the door and looked at me and my customer and responds with, "Somebody call the police. We have a jerk right over here," and continued to walk out the door. As soon as that customer said that, all of our attention went towards my coworker. There was an older man beginning to scream at her, and from where I was at, it was a bit hard to hear because of his screaming, but what I did hear absolutely shocked me. He was screaming that they had stolen his money and that he was being robbed and that he was going to call the cops. This guy was screaming so loud that everyone who was either within checkout or at the front of the store radius was paying attention to what was happening with this guy and my coworker. There were several people telling him that he needed to calm down, but he always responded back by screaming, "Shut up, mind your own business." The people around my register were starting to say how we needed to call security or the police police. Even the woman who complained about her receipt was saying how this guy was out of control. I honestly agreed with them, but the problem was we didn't have security and we couldn't exactly call the police either. Eventually, two of my managers came in, both of them being women, one dealing with my customer and the other one dealing with this crazy old man. At this point, I started taking my next customer, apologizing to her for the wait, and continued on with my business. The guy did walk past my register to get to the customer service, but I avoided eye contact. A little later, when we didn't hear any customers, I did proceed to ask my coworker if she was okay, and she said that she was. She didn't even look fazed by what happened. She told me that this customer was buying stuff, and that included roasting sticks, that at the time was like $1. My coworker said to this guy, "Okay, sir, here is your change," and she ended up giving him a little over $2 in change. And once that entitled crazy customer saw this, he went off by screaming, "I'm not touching that. You overcharged me." He then shows her his receipt to show that she accidentally charged him for 2 roasting sticks. And this was an honest mistake, so the coworker owned up to it and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. Mistakes happen. I apologize." The old man responds by saying, "Well, I don't make mistakes." And this is honestly where things really started to kick off. My coworker then had to tell him that he had to go to customer service just to get his money back. But this entitled customer was not having it because he responded back by saying, "No, I want my $10 back now." My coworker said, "Sorry, sir, I can't do that." She then proceeds to close the register drawer with change still in hand. And that's when everything fell apart for this guy. But the thing is, this crazy guy didn't even spend $10 according to my coworker. He was just really upset over getting overcharged $1. There were no cops involved, just a crazy dude freaking out over $2, who also ended up getting those $2 back. I do have to say that my coworker is a freaking legend because of how well she handled the situation, despite this old man freaking out and claiming that they were robbing him. My guess is that she's dealt with customers like this before, and that's why she was probably so calm and collected. I overheard her say that she was glad it happened to her instead of one of the younger employees. I probably would have cried if this happened to me, since I'm terrible with confrontation and people yelling and screaming at me just does not end well for me. My manager did say later on that she came out from the back of the store and heard the screaming, so that should give you an insight of how loud this guy really was yelling. I'm glad to finally be free of that place, to be completely honest with you. However, after working there for nearly 4 years, that crazy entitled man had to be the worst customer I've ever seen while working there, and I'm so glad that now I work somewhere else. How weird and entitled do you have to be to freak out over $2? I mean, he got his money back in the end, but that's such an overreaction. Accidents really do happen, and there's honestly nothing more cringeworthy in my opinion than watching some weird customer freak out over something so small. Like it's an honest mistake, they didn't do it on purpose. I always try to give anybody in customer service the benefit of the doubt. Chances are they don't even want to work at that job and would much rather be doing literally anything else. But here they are doing it anyways, just trying to make ends meet in their life. So when people act like this, it's just really gross and weird. So good for the original poster for getting a better job, because dealing with people like that on a daily basis can absolutely destroy your spirit. And in my opinion, it's just not worth dealing with. My boyfriend's friends want nothing to do with me, and I'm honestly not sure, as they're not giving me a fair chance, and it all seems so confusing. Okay, some of this isn't going to sound great, but hear me out. I've been with my boyfriend for about 11 months. We met at work, and when we did meet, he was married, and they were having a lot of problems. He was pretty much checked out of the relationship. We kind of had a flirtatious relationship for a while. Things came to a head, and we hooked up on Halloween. The next 2 weeks were honestly the most romantic weeks of my life. I get why people say it's hot because it's forbidden, but it was also emotionally intimate. He told me things he's never shared with anyone, his past, his dreams, etc. He said he didn't know that he could feel this way about someone until he met me. We didn't mean for it to happen. It just sort of did. He left his wife shortly after that and finally started dating me in the open. We went to work together, we hung out together after work, we spent some quality time together, we had dates that were romantic. It was honestly everything. We found out in early May that we were pregnant, and in June he invited me to move in with him. Since we got together, we hang out with my friends all the time. We've only hung out with his friends a few times though. At first I couldn't quite explain it, but the vibe was always off. His friends all have wives or long-term girlfriends, girlfriends, and I think they're the real problem. They don't invite me to hang out with them when their guys get together, even though they all hang out. They don't ask about my pregnancy. One of them is getting married, and my boyfriend is one of the groomsmen, and besides the wedding and rehearsal dinner, I haven't been invited to any of the events. I've tried really hard to make genuine connections with his friends and significant others. We invited them to our gender reveal, and I try to talk to them at our barbecue. I try to plan outings with them, but nothing further comes along other than polite conversations. Then I learned why you should never ask a question you don't want the answer to. I was fed up with the walls that they were putting up, so I got one of the girls that was getting married alone off to the side, and I asked her up front what the issue was. She told me that she's just being polite when she sees me, and we don't really have anything to talk about. She said she's not interested in new friends, and we have nothing in common, and she doesn't want to hang out with 20-year-olds, as she is significantly older than me. She then said something that really hurt my feelings. She said I'm immature and I'm fake. Basically, I think she thinks that she's better than I am and isn't giving me a fair chance. Also, it's not like I want to be friends with her either, but I at least put in the effort to try and be nice to my boyfriend's friends. I feel totally hurt and alone. Where do I even go from here? I don't want to ask my boyfriend to cut his friends off, but they are determined on not liking me. Am I making too big of a deal out of this? Do I just let it go and deal with it overall? What should I do? This is a tricky situation for a few reasons. Because for one, it seems like the original poster is the reason that this guy divorced his wife. Like you literally hooked up with him while he was still married, and you're the reason why he tore his marriage apart. I think you gotta realize that. Sure, it was already falling apart as it is, but there was always room to try and get it together, and he basically left her to go with you. And that's really sketchy in my opinion. And I think along with that, there's a good chance that his friends know about that. And besides the fact that you're already much younger than they are, they probably are not very happy with you and your boyfriend that he basically left his wife to go with some lady that was like a decade younger than him. I think there's some things going on behind the scenes that you probably don't know about. You can't honestly expect a friend group to accept you after you broke up a marriage, right? I mean, that's just my perspective. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, please leave a comment and let me know. But that's kind of just what I'm observing from the outside looking in. Also, on top of that, you're pregnant at the age of 20. By the way, the boyfriend in this situation is 29. That is a massive age gap. She is barely not a teenager. You know what I mean? Like, that's just strange. So honestly, I would not get your hopes up about having any kind of friendship with these ladies, or any of his friends in general, because the situation that you have caused in his life, as well as the surrounding people in his life, is really, really bad. And I think you need to wake up and see what the damage really is around you. My entitled ex-mother-in-law gets involved in my life and calls me terrible names all behind her son's back. And now I honestly could not be happier that they are out of my life. So my ex-husband and I ended our marriage amicably. There was no cheating or anything like that. There was just too much stress due to some issues that happened, and we both decided that it was for the best. Now, it seems like in my life, I must be a magnet for insane people. From my mother to an ex-friend, to her mother, to other men who have just been weird. My life is messed up sometimes. Both of us were feeling the strain, and our mental health was taking hits all the time. We argued a lot, even over the pettiest of reasons. Our oldest son was also being affected by it. We had stopped going to couples therapy, and we weren't even spending enough time with each other like we used to. I would often sleep in bed, and he would sleep on the couch in his office. He knew what he was getting into, but he decided after our youngest was born that he couldn't deal with it like he thought. After talking about it and trying to come up with solutions, we chose to end our marriage. It hurt and broke our eldest son's heart, but we agreed to stay friends, and so far it has been working out fine. He's still in our lives, has a room for our kids at his place, and takes our eldest to school every morning and visits a couple days out of the week. He and I have lunch twice a week to talk about the kids. Our divorce court judge must be absolutely loving us, and at the time, this was the best decision that we made. At least that's what I thought. I moved myself and the boys into a 2-bedroom apartment, and I am working full-time as a bartender at a gentleman's club. I love my job. I've only been there a few weeks, and I'm making good money, close to $1,000 a week just in wages and tips. So with alimony and child support, we're sitting pretty. I am trying to lose weight so I can become a dancer at the club. I'm doing the keto diet and going to the gym regularly. I'm shedding the pounds that I want to lose, and I'm already down a dress size. I have always struggled with my weight. I was never overweight, but not exactly skinny. The women in my family always have big hips and big thighs. I'm also using a waist trimmer to help with my figure and posture. I do my hair and makeup, and I go to work looking and feeling like a movie star. I have long dark hair and green eyes. I started getting spray tans when we moved to the city, and I have fallen in love with it. I feel good about myself. myself for the first time in years, and I am an ever-evolving work in progress. I have to brag here that even my ex-husband turns his head whenever I walk into the room and tells me that he kind of regrets not spending time with me. And I have to admit it, I get a little bit of satisfaction out of that. I used to dress super frumpy and didn't bother much beyond a shower and brushing my teeth. I also want to add that I never attended college. My ex-husband is tall with a deep olive complexion, with jet black hair that he keeps slicked back, a full beard that he keeps short, and large golden brown eyes. And he dresses well. He is full-blooded Greek, and his parents immigrated to the US right after they got married. His father found success in real estate, while his mother maintained the family home. They lived in wealthy comfort in a massive house in Connecticut until they moved to my old state. Their home in my old state is just as massive and considered to be a mansion. So needless to say, I was nowhere in my ex-husband's league, but his family welcomed me with open arms. They were the family I always dreamed of having, the opposite of my family in every way. I love them so much and called my in-laws mom and dad. We always got along and talked almost daily. My mother-in-law often sent me receipts of Greek dishes for me to learn how to cook, all because my ex-husband loved it. We often went to a little Greek bistro as a family, and I make it a point to have my eldest son try stuff from his father's side of the family. So you can imagine my surprise when my mother-in-law called me to chastise me about the divorce. She said that if I had been a better wife and lover, Bill would have stayed with me. She said that this was too great of a sin to forgive, and I needed to find God and pray for forgiveness for my wicked ways. I don't know where this was coming from, but she needs to have this talk with her son and not me. She then blew up at me saying that my new job is tempting sin and that it was the devil's playground and my body would be soiled for her son and he wouldn't want to be with a woman like me. I then reminded her that her son and I have been divorced, and she said that I chased him away. She said every picture she received from us since I began bettering myself weren't worth going into her albums because I looked like a lady of the night, as she put it. I got upset and told her it wasn't my looks that were the problem. It was her son's decision, and it was all the stress from the situation. She then said that her son basically didn't want to be with me anymore because the woman that he married was nowhere to be seen, and I was nothing more than a lady of the night. And at this point, I started to cry because I was in such disbelief that my mother-in-law would be so mean to me after she had been so kind to me all of these years. It was legitimately an absolute blindside to me. The club I work at is a gentleman's club, and it caters to the higher elite in my city society. Our prices are not cheap, and while some of it definitely is risque by its nature, there are still standards and protections around the people who work here as well as the people that show up. In fact, my boss is all about safety and doesn't take anybody's garbage anymore. Even the customers that think their money is their get-out-of-free jail card, assuming that they can use that status as some way of treating the dancers and staff like garbage. In fact, he has thrown out several people since I've started working there. After this conversation, I hung up on my mother-in-law and I called my ex-husband and asked him to come over. As soon as he walked in, I confronted him about what his mother said. He assured me that it wasn't true and that he didn't know why his mother-in-law said any of those things. I then asked him if he was bitter because of my job and that I had been bettering myself recently. He said no and that he was happy for me. He called his mother and put her on speakerphone and asked her why she would say such cruel things to me. At this point, the mother-in-law got upset and felt ganged up on in the moment. She then admitted that it was a lie, but was only looking out for her son. My ex-husband then sighed and said it wasn't appropriate for her to speak to me like that, and said that he was the one who wanted the divorce, not me. The argument goes on, and eventually his mother starts crying, and at the time it looked like he wanted to apologize for making her cry. But he said that she should apologize to me for being unkind and holding my past against me, which was brought up in this argument. But at that point she went silent and then hung up. Over the next few days, things kinda settled down for the most part. My ex-husband brought me flowers to try and make up for it, and also took me out to lunch. Fast forward to last night, and my ex-husband came over to talk to me about my mother-in-law, and to that I said I didn't want to discuss it anymore. At this point in our lives, I made the decision that I wasn't going to talk to her anymore, and I told him that I wanted to stick with that until I felt ready to contact her again. But he thinks I'm overreacting and being unreasonable. He said that I needed to be more understanding that she is Catholic, and that she believes that divorce is a sin. He acknowledges that it is his fault for the divorce though, but he then added on to it, saying that my job is a problem for her, and maybe I should consider looking for something else just to make her happy. And at that point, I saw red. I got incredibly upset, and I told him to pound sand. My job makes me happy, and that is all that matters. I don't care if his mother-in-law has a problem with it, it, I don't care if he does either. It's my life. He chose to leave, not me. I won't be told what to do anymore. My job provides for me and my kids and keeps a roof over our heads. I reminded him that his alimony and child support, while appreciated, isn't needed, and I can manage alone without his help, even with 2 kids. I won't apologize for my job. I also won't apologize for bettering myself and finally finding the self-confidence I didn't know I had, and I won't apologize for his stupid mistakes. I then said to him that I'm not his wife anymore, so he and his mother don't get a say in what I do. I then told him that he needs to get lost. I will never let anyone talk to me like that ever again. No one will walk all over me, not even my ex-husband. This man came into my life and took me and my son into his family. We had a child together, and then things fell apart. Honestly, I don't owe anybody anything, and I will never let anybody put me down or talk down to me like that ever again. The fact that the mother-in-law got involved in that conversation is really gross and disgusting. I mean, what an absolute nightmare. It's good to see that the original poster has found their footing, and they've made the decision that, you know what, I'm not going to be talked down to like this. Good for them for moving forward with their lives, and hopefully things work out for her as well as her kids. My fiance had a very sheltered upbringing, and I feel like I'm often guiding him through basic things in life, and I'm honestly not sure what to do. I'm a 28-year-old female, and I have to guide my extremely sheltered fiance through life, and sometimes it's just plain exhausting. To preface this, I'm not really looking for validation. I just feel like if I get this out of my system, I'll feel better. I have an amazing fiance. He's kind and funny and handsome and loving. We've been together for 8 years, and we have a healthy and happy relationship. However, his extremely sheltered upbringing has been a source of frustration for me at times. He wasn't allowed to have friends over to his house growing up. He couldn't even go to parties. The family only took 2 trips a year, one to Disneyland and one to the South to visit his family. He never cooked. They didn't go to restaurants. He was raised to fear everything. The whole family are germaphobes, as a matter of fact. The kids couldn't be in a room with the door closed. They didn't fly on airplanes or use public transportation. He wasn't allowed to take highways when driving. They didn't carve pumpkins on Halloween, and they didn't dye Easter eggs. They never went swimming, and the kids don't even know how to swim. And honestly, the list goes on and on. Also, none of these choices came from money issues. They were always fine financially. I feel like because of his upbringing, he missed several pivotal milestones in his life, and I sometimes feel like I'm showing him basic life stuff, and I don't mean to make it sound like it's all bad. In fact, it often creates a lot of really good memories for us. For example, I got to teach him how to make a jack-o'-lantern. I got to see him experience national parks for the first time because I was the one that took him there. His first time cooking for me was adorable. He cooked chicken Alfredo with jarred sauce, and the chicken was just frozen dinosaur nuggets. He tried sushi and Indian food because of me, but other times, explaining basic practices and social conventions almost brings me to tears. Trying to explain to him that if he's invited to a wedding and the invite says +1, it means that he can take me with him and that I want to go, but he doesn't take me, and then he's surprised at the wedding when his friends ask where I am. He didn't know you bring significant others to events in your life. If he cooks dinner, he can't do more than 2 tasks without asking me if it's the right move. Every time we fly, I have to explain to him that it's okay to bring snacks because the no more than 3-ounce rule does not apply to solid foods. And this happens every single time. I can't sit quietly and watch TV without him asking me every 5 minutes if I'm okay because I'm being quiet. For context, the silent treatment was used a lot in his upbringing, so it's a foreign concept to him for someone to be really quiet and not extremely mad. He's uncomfortable being in separate rooms and will follow me around like a lost dog. If we're watching TV and I get up to get water, he'll get up and just follow me. Another thing that bothers me is that he doesn't clean. He leaves out all sorts of things, from video game controllers to Gundam models to all other projects that he might be working on. He's not advancing his career because he doesn't eat lunch with others or socialize with them, and he skips the social networking events that aren't required because everyone except him knows they are required. The first time I took him to the beach, he didn't know there would be fish in the water, and there are many other situations like this that over time have become extremely exhausting. And I know, I sound a bit whiny, but this stuff obviously doesn't all happen at once. It all just kind of builds up over time, and I didn't realize it until today when I was explaining it to him that married couples typically spend the holidays together and don't separate to spend them at their respective families' houses. This was after I found out he made plans to spend Thanksgiving with his family and told me when it was too late to get my tickets back home. I love love our relationship, but I just needed to put this out in the universe. Because honestly, a lot of this is getting very exhausting. This is really unfortunate, because I honestly don't think that your fiancé is completely incapable of learning how to do simple tasks. Like, it sounds like he needs some kind of class to learn how to be an adult. Maybe there's something at like a college that you can sign him up for, just to teach him basic life skills. This is really unfortunate to deal with. And I'm sure that there's a honeymoon period where you really did enjoy this and it was probably really cute, but I can also see how this would add up pretty quickly and be absolutely obnoxious eventually. But it sounds like you guys love each other and you really are trying to make things work. So hopefully it does work and he's able to step up and be the adult that you know that he certainly can be. My entitled parents ruined every birthday since my sister was born, allowing my sister to blow out my birthday candles as well as to have all of my gifts and presents. And after 8 years of misery and woe, I finally blew up on my parents and let the cat out of the bag. And now as a result, my entire family sided with me and turned on my parents for their disgusting behavior and their absolute neglect towards my happiness. And I honestly can't believe how things went down. Here's what happened. So this year, I'm 18 years old, and fairly recently, I am on my own from my parents. I have a sister about 10 years younger than me. She was an unplanned pregnancy and nearly didn't make it to term. I don't know many of the details of how rough my mother's second pregnancy was, since I was never told much, but I do know that it was so hard on her body that my mother could no longer have kids after my sister was born. She was in and out of the hospital repeatedly that year. My mother almost didn't survive the birth either. It made her and my father latch on to my little sister because she could have potentially never been born. And ever since then, I felt like I was just the other child in the house. That is, except for when they needed a free babysitter. The level of favoritism my parents showed long term has me believing they are genuinely sick in the head for not noticing exactly what it was doing to me. And now it's rebounding on them. So starting with my 11th birthday, my parents wanted me to let my sister blow out my candles because she was 2 years old and cried at the sight of birthday cake that wasn't hers. I didn't want to do it, but my parents forced me into it, and they relit the candles for me to do it again after her. But at that point, the moment felt completely ruined. The same thing happened the next year and the year after that, and so on and so forth. They just kept forcing it until it became the norm. My sister even had to have presents on my birthdays as well. And to top it all off, I never got any of hers either. And when I asked why, they just told me that I'm a boy and boys don't need to worry about it as much. I know I was a kid, but did they really think that this was the best thing to say or the smartest thing to say? Not really, in my opinion. And my parents would always choose a place my sister would like to be at more than me on my own birthday. Eventually, it became more like my sister was getting 2 birthdays a year and I was getting none. Beyond this, my parents made their entire lives revolve around my sister. If there's something I wanted to do, my sister had to want to do it too. Otherwise, it was vetoed, unless I could do it alone. I eventually just learned to lock myself in my room with my video games because they didn't seem to bother me there. That is, unless my sister wanted to run into my room and annoy me, hence why I always put a lock on the door. My parents wanted me to remove it, but I freaked out because I was an angry teenager who was tired of being intruded on at any given moment. My sister came running in more than once when I had no clothes on, and my parents were upset at me for being naked in my own room. When I pointed out how ludicrous that was, they withdrew their objection and just let me keep the lock. My sister developed quite the princess complex because of how she was being spoiled on a daily basis, and she was very demanding, so I stayed away from her as much as feasibly possible. Whatever excuse I could use to not have to deal with her, I used it. Even if I had to make up stuff just to have time to myself. My parents hired a teenage girl babysitter, and I got more personal time. But eventually, the babysitter quit because my sister wouldn't listen to her, and my parents tried to keep from paying her by saying that she did a bad job. The girl got some other people involved, and my parents finally paid her what they owed her. Then they hired another girl to babysit on the regular, and this one ended up staying. But my parents made it clear that I was to be watching my sister any day I had free, which I went out of my way to make sure I was busy, especially at my part-time job if I could. My sister treated me as her personal butler and ordered me around. She even had a stupid nickname for me that she wouldn't stop using, and just hearing that nickname makes my blood boil. And if I didn't give her everything she wanted, she'd cry and call our parents, and then I would be in trouble for mistreating her. We had many massive arguments because of this, and after I refused to yield anymore, my relationship with my parents de-evolved into barely any words spoken between us for some time. And yet, during my high school graduation, they had the nerve to brag to other parents that they were the reason I worked so hard. Well, they weren't wrong, but the reason they were thinking of was not the one that actually happened. I worked hard just biding my time for when I'd be free finally from my parents. But my parents acted like they'd done so much. I mean, maybe they did before my sister was born, but afterwards, it was all about her. They didn't even ask me about school until parent-teacher conferences came up. I graduated with a B and C average, and after my graduation, my parents just took me to some place where my sister would always have more fun than me, even though the trip was supposed to be for me. On my 18th birthday in July, though, things really boiled to the surface. Even though it was my 18th birthday, it still didn't feel like it was all about me. I hoped to God that we were going to my favorite restaurant for once, but no, they had the party at the local knockoff Chuck E. Cheese, which is the only place like it nearby to us. So it was the de facto celebratory destination whenever anything big was achieved, including my high school graduation. I did say to them that it was a place that my sister would enjoy much more than me. I was surrounded by kids half my age having parties, and I was so bored with nothing to do but eat mediocre pizza and play claw machines and dated arcade games for tickets to cheaply made prizes that brought me no joy. Then, when it was time for cake, my parents came out with one that was pink with white flowers on it. Sure, it had my name on it, but it was very obviously not a boy's cake, and there were only 10 candles. My parents lit the candles and set them right in front of my sister to blow out. That's when it finally happened. I had this mental moment of all the pent-up hate mentally flashing before me, and then I started ugly crying. I, an 18-year-old boy, was crying in front of the whole family. Everyone was so shocked that time seemed to just freeze. I got up and all the stuff I'd been holding in for the past 8 years just spilled out like word vomit. The entire family got to witness this event, and when it was finally over, I just walked outside to sit by the family car. Several relatives trailed out after me to say they were so sorry and that they didn't know about the pink cake because my parents kept it covered till it was served. I said it didn't matter that they didn't know. They all sat back and watched as my life was taken over by Little Miss Sunshine for the past 8 years. I had no real birthdays or celebrations of my own. They were all about her. And then, on the biggest birthday of my life, they all expected me to just smile and nod, like always, while they handed my sister a cake that was entirely meant for her, when it wasn't even her birthday. Some of them started giving me apologies, but they made the excuse that all this time, they just thought I was okay with it, because my parents said I was. I told them I was never okay with it, and my parents forced it on me every year, till I just pretended to accept it. I then spread my arms out, motioning around me, and said, "Look at where we are. Does it look like the place I wanted to celebrate my graduation and 18th birthday? No one even tried to stick up for me all this time. I'm just the other kid while my sister gets everything. I didn't even get to have any of my friends there because my parents stopped letting me invite them long ago after they tried to voice their opinions over my sister getting to blow out my candles. There are 365 days a year, and was it really so bad to just want one that was about me and not her? Instead, I'm treated like the greedy, entitled brat for wanting my own birthday. Then I just went back to ugly crying. My father came back outside by that point to yell at me for making such a huge scene. Because my mother was crying too, my sister was upset because I ruined her moment, and now everybody in there who saw this thinks that they're bad parents. I ended up yelling at him that they are bad parents, and he should know exactly why. Well, after I said that, the rest of the family descended on him like a pack of wolves. Better late than never, I suppose. But I'd never seen anything like it before. My father was practically backed up to the restaurant front door, and then most of the crowd flooded back inside with him to have it out with my mother too. My grandparents stayed with me and apologized for having their eyes shut for so long. I don't know what was said to my parents at the restaurant, but it was roughly a half an hour before they came back out, and when they did, they looked incredibly defeated. My mother was still sniffling after crying so hard, and neither of my parents could look me in the eyes. They both awkwardly apologized for what they did, and then offered to redo the party elsewhere. But that wasn't really enough for the crowd. One of my uncles scoffed rather loudly in the crowd, and my parents said that they would never let my little sister blow out my candles again, or give her presents on my birthday, or make any part of it about her. There was then another scoff, and my parents also apologized for getting a cake that was obviously not meant for me, and that they just felt like I wasn't worried about cake anymore at my age. age. And oh boy, was that the wrong thing to say. I became furious all over again and yelled at them again that my age was irrelevant. They literally gave my birthday to my sister and had no good reason as to why, and they knew it. Then I said there was no point in redoing the party because it was way too late. They quite clearly show that I mean nothing to them. They ruined 8 years of my life till I became an adult. What future birthdays with them could I possibly look forward to? Well, my father started to get angry at me for saying that, but when the entire family yelled at him, he shut up. My grandfather told him I'm exactly right, and there's no possible way they can undo the damage done now. He said my parents were awful people. They played favorites and treated me like the black sheep ever since my sister was born. And what's more, they were all awful themselves because they just let it happen too. And I am owed far more than an apology. I was owed my life back. My mother broke down again and tried to come closer to me while crying my name and apologizing, but I refused to let her anywhere near me, and half the family body blocked them from getting closer. I just said I couldn't take this anymore, and I started to walk away. One of my aunts chased me down and brought me back. I could hear multiple family members yelling and cussing at my parents over what had happened, but I was so upset, I couldn't even feel happy for any bit of justice after all of this. Also, where was my sister when all this was going on? She was still in the restaurant all by herself, eating cake and ripping open presents that were there for me. And if anyone was wondering, yes, my parents served her some cake after I cried and walked out. You'd think doing that wouldn't be their primary focus in the moment, but they were called out on it later. My grandparents got me to calm down and sit in their old minivan while everyone else cleared out the party. My sister threw a huge temper tantrum after being caught opening my presents, one of which was a brand new smartphone, and she threw it against the wall and broke it because she wasn't allowed to keep it. She literally just got a brand new phone on her own birthday a few months earlier. I ended up being so upset that I was ranting that I never wanted to celebrate my birthday again, and my grandparents let me stay the night over at their house. When I came home, I still didn't speak to my parents. My mother just kept crying because I refused to talk to her, and my father was just as closed-mouthed to me as I was to him. The following weekend, my grandparents convinced me to go with them out to dinner, and when we got there, I was surprised to find a whole new party waiting for me. My own parents were there, and they had the "Don't Hate Us" smiles plastered on their face the entire time. There was a big chocolate cake with 18 candles on it, and there was even a banner with my name on it. They called it my happy belated birthday graduation party because I didn't really get either this year. I did kind of have to pretend to be happy, but one good party doesn't undo 8 years of favoritism or even make a dent in it, really. And where was my sister? She was sitting at the table with her arms folded and her lip curled because it wasn't all about her like it used to be. And rather than saying happy birthday for me, they just sang an alternate version called Happy Day. Then, as soon as I blew out the candles, my sister screamed. I mean an ear-bleeding, loud little girl scream. My parents had to rush her out and then bring her back in later, looking more upset than ever. She quietly pouted in her seat for the rest of the party. I did still get a new smartphone as well, and my sister got hers taken away, among other things that she did at the prior party. But the smartphone wasn't all. The whole family had chipped in and gotten me a car. It was just an old white Volvo, but I loved it the moment I laid eyes on it. My grandfather knows a thing or two about cars and fixed it up himself. I was so happy, but my sister clearly was not because she let out another one of those screams. She started having a massive temper tantrum and demanded a car of her own. My mother had to take her into the bathroom, and they didn't come out for a while. My father just went back to looking defeated. My sister had effectively ruined their attempt at trying to look good in front of the whole family. Multiple family members also had strong words from my parents that my sister was acting that way because they raised her to be such a princess spoiled brat. I obviously started driving the car around right away, but only days later, my sister actually vandalized the car by taking a hammer and breaking 2 of the side windows and cracking the windshield to the point that the car was undrivable. My parents managed to stop her before she did any more damage, but she screamed like a maniac when they grabbed her and took the hammer away, then tried to bite them as a result. And after that, everyone was furious with my sister, especially my grandparents, because my grandfather had put so much work into that car, and my sister ruined it while having a massive temper tantrum. My grandparents had spoiled my sister so badly that she couldn't mentally comprehend that I could have something that she could not, and several other family members laid into my parents about how they were setting my sister up for failure by making her an entitled brat that expects the world to be given to her, and she's going to have a terrible adult life because they won't put their foot down and teach her her some respect. Well, her actions didn't go unpunished. My sister was grounded for the rest of the summer, and effective of the new school year, she was sent to a boarding school. My mother cried like a baby about it too, but my father had to be adamant that it was the only way to start undoing the damage that they had done. Yes, they fully acknowledged that they are at fault. I mean, it was kind of hard for them not to, since no one sided with them at all. My sister is absolutely miserable at that school. She hates the clothes, she hates the rules, and she's been lying almost constantly. But with the cameras almost everywhere now, she's not getting away with any of it. Our parents tried to visit her a few times, but she just screamed at them for putting her in that place. From what I hear, this may just be her school life until she's 18 years old. My parents did thankfully pay to fix my car. They had an auto glass company replace the windows and windshield, and it looks like it just did before. In August, my father came to me and said that if I was interested, he found me a job working for a friend, but it was 40 miles away, so I would need to move out of my parents' house unless I wanted to commute. But you know what? I was all for moving. Finding a first apartment wasn't so easy though. I had to get approved for a credit card just to get accepted for a studio, but I got it, and I have been living where I am now since September. My parents keep trying to contact me, but I rarely speak to them. Anytime we do speak, I just feel awkward and uncomfortable. My grandfather has suggested that they simply don't want to acknowledge how badly they failed as parents, and trying to get me to forgive them will make them feel better about themselves or something like that. But I'm not going to forgive them, not anytime soon at least. I'm finally happy and away from them, and now they've got nothing. They don't have me, and they don't have my sister, and my parents had to take more hours at work because boarding school for my sister is not cheap, nor can I imagine was the party they had thrown for me, or the repairs for my car. Empty house, angry relatives, and the only thing they have left is their work. Feels like incredible misery to me, and I don't take delight in it, but it is the result of their own actions after all. So you know what? They had it coming. This story is unbelievably heartbreaking. How ridiculous can these parents possibly be? They quite literally revolved their entire life around this one daughter and completely forgot about their son. They allowed this spoiled child to basically run this house, and if anything, that child raised those parents, not the other way around. And that is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, what were they thinking treating someone like that? It's not fair, it's absolutely disgusting behavior, and I am so glad this original poster got away from their family, more specifically their parents. It's also fantastic to see that his extended family stepped up to the plate and supported him exactly when he needed the help. And this was all because his parents failed him completely and entirely. But the story did have a fantastic ending, and I really hope that the original poster is able to find happiness and peace. And hopefully they never have to deal with their parents ever again, because they honestly don't sound like good people, and this original poster does not need that kind of energy in their life. My entitled aunt and her family are trying to use my parents' address just so they can get some low-income housing, despite the fact that they can definitely afford to buy a house. Here's what happened. So my dad's siblings and their families immigrated to the US 4 to 5 years ago. My dad applied for them and paid all the associated fees related to the application. Once they got here, he helped them find housing, as well as find jobs, and get into schools the school-age kids. Despite doing all of that, his siblings basically acted as if he didn't do anything for them. Not only that, they kissed up to my dad's younger brother, who was already in the US. They thought they didn't need my dad's help, and the younger brother would help them instead. The younger brother actually ended up screwing a few of them over, which is a decent story in and of itself. But about 3 weeks ago, one of my aunts and her oldest son by the name of Kay asked my parents to use their address as part of their application for low-income housing in the city my parents live in. My dad said they can use the address, but he won't be putting their names on any sort of utilities. My aunt and Kay said that my parents should help family, but my dad told them that he had done enough for them already. My aunt and Kay came over again earlier this week. This time, they brought a housing application where they wanted my dad to say he was my aunt's landlord. Kay told my dad to just sign it and that he would fill out the rest, which is just super shady behavior. My dad once again told them no. My mom asked Kay why they are applying for low-income housing instead of just buying a home. Based off of some previous conversations, they definitely have enough money for a down payment. Kay works as an engineer and 2 other people in the family work, so combined they have a decent income. Kay said he doesn't want to, because then he would have to get a loan and pay interest, which is against his religion. And while this is true, my mom did point out how Kay and my aunt were lying, which is also something that wouldn't be good for their religion. Not only are they trying to lie about where they live, but they are also also lying about their situation. The application would just have my aunt, her husband, and one of her daughters. However, Kay would live there too, and he makes enough to disqualify them completely. My aunt and Kay ended up leaving, with Kay apparently telling my parents to just rip up the application since they are choosing to be selfish and not help out their family. As usual, my dad's side of the family only thinks about themselves and have a short-term memory on the time and money that we already spent on them. How gross and entitled do you have to be to go to family and not only demand that they sign some form without explaining what you're gonna do with it, but also basically lying to the government about your housing and financial situation? They would be disqualified so quickly for lying on this form and basically be kicked out of their house, all because this K guy doesn't want to pay some kind of mortgage loan, despite the fact that he's an engineer and he can definitely pay for it. Really scummy behavior overall. And it also really leaves a bad taste in the mouth of the original poster that they were being so mean to their dad, all while trying to justify their actions based on their religious ideologies, which is honestly such a toxic thing to do in my opinion. So good for the dad for putting his foot down and saying, no, you're not going to use my name or my address for your low-income housing that you definitely don't need. If anything, it's time for these people to step up and actually practice what they preach, instead of trying to fraud the federal government just to try and get some cheap housing. An entitled jerk demands that I give a photo shoot for free, despite the fact that this would normally cost me $900. And after trying to negotiate a higher price just so I can get my money's worth, this entitled jerk freaks out on me and calls me some terrible names. Here's what happened. So I'm an amateur photographer that photographs events for a couple $100 since I still am a student. One of my friends suggested a person who was looking for a photographer for his sister's baby shower in Austin, Texas, which is about 4.5 hours away from me. I contacted this guy, we'll call him Jack, that's not his real name, asking if he was still looking for a photographer. He said yes and asked me for a quote. I said I usually charge $100 an hour with about 20 to 25 pictures an hour along with edits, but since it would be a 6-hour event with several dance performances, skits, and games, a 9-hour drive to and from this event, plus accommodations since it will be pretty late to drive back, and the fact that he needs a videographer along with me as a photographer, as he doesn't want me to go back and forth, I ended up asking for about $150 an hour. So the grand total for this event would be about $900, and this would include everything that I mentioned above. He asked me if I was a professional photographer, and I told him not exactly, but I have been doing this for 6 years, and I am pretty good at editing pictures. I sent him my portfolio of both raw and edited pictures, which takes, by the way, a minimum of about 2 hours per 10 pictures. All this because I'm not super fluent at Photoshop. Jack asked if he could call me in a few hours and then hung up. Fast forward to a few hours later, and he called me back and said that he really loves my portfolio, but he really can't pay more than $500, and that even $500 is too much because according to him, photography is easy, and anybody with a smartphone can be good at photography. I clarified saying I will be taking pictures with my camera and not a smartphone, and what I am asking is not too much considering he is getting 2 people for 6 hours for the price of 1, not to mention the other factors included. At this point, Jack started arguing that he is doing me a favor by even considering $500, since this would bring me exposure and I am not even a professional photographer. I told him that if I were at a local event, I'd love to do it for $75 an hour. He said it is local since it's within state lines and it's just a mere 4-hour drive away. He also said there are professional photographers charging only $200 for a 6-hour event. I told him to give me some time to see if I could reduce the price by cutting any cost on my end. I tried to negotiate with him and told him that I will do it for $500 as I am in college and I really need some extra money. But that's when everything changed all of the sudden. He suddenly decided that he was going to refuse me saying that I would do this for $500. He then said that I need to understand that he's just trying to get a gift for his sister with eternal memories and that I should honestly just do it for free as I didn't take up the offer before. By the way, only 20 minutes have passed, which is really not that much time to negotiate anything else. After I heard that, I was honestly appalled, and so I told him that I would not be doing that. And it was at that point that he called me a jerk and said my pictures weren't even that good, which honestly really hurt my feelings. Fast forward to 2 days later, and he actually had the gall to call me back again and said that he is willing to pay me $200 for a 6-hour event, as that's the price that professionals charge in the city of Austin. I told him no again because my friend wants to cancel as he's not getting paid enough to take video, and it's a waste of an entire weekend for absolutely no money. He then got super upset, called me a bunch of childish names and hung up the phone. And honestly, I think I'm kind of happy that he did, because I probably dodged a massive jerk. How unbelievably entitled do you have to be to try and not only reduce and undercut the price that this person's trying to give them, but then basically imply that their payment should be exposure? That's literally such a disgusting thing to say to somebody who's taking time out of their busy college schedule just to try and make some cash on the side. And that's such an insulting thing to say as well, because exposure doesn't pay for the bills, and it would literally do nothing in a situation like this. Like, this is just some stupid baby shower, like, come on. So good for the original poster for sticking to their values and saying straight up that no, they are worth much more than that, because this entitled jerk sounds incredibly toxic, and I can't imagine traveling for 4+ hours just to go there and deal with him all day. That would have been an absolute nightmare. An entitled Karen refuses to tip me at a restaurant I worked at, but I bided my time and I eventually got revenge at my new job, and this lady never saw it coming. Here's what happened. So I used to work at a horrible Mexican restaurant, and by horrible, I mean horribly managed. The manager was a penny pincher, didn't care if it was at the expense of someone else. This was one of the only restaurants where I would double drop checks, and even go as far as to teach the other servers, because this owner was always trying to give us the garbage end of the stick. I hated him, and I have never hated anyone more in my entire life. Because he was always trying to save money, he would hire as little people as possible. No expo, no food prep, no bussers, not even a manager who could speak English. Imagine working at a restaurant where as a server you had to translate guest complaints to a manager, so you can already imagine how upset guests were, either because of slow service or because of cold food. Well, one day I got a guest who was absolutely unbearable. She ticked off every box of what a Karen is before the term even existed. Her food came out cold and I apologized and told her that I'd get her fresh, warm food, and she seemed patient and polite, and even told me that she knows it's not my fault and to not worry as it would not affect my tip. So much to my surprise, when she does leave after her meal, she leaves me a few pennies as a tip. I was furious and I ran outside. I got her attention and I told her, "Here ma'am, you forgot your change. If it was a tip, I don't want it. Have a good day." She left and other guests apologized on her behalf for being such an absolute jerk. One of the guests even told me that as I was leaving to get her a new plate, this entitled Karen was saying to her friend behind my back that she's not going to tip me anything and that she is going to save her money for Valentine's Day, which is a perfect example of wasted resources on a human being. Fast forward maybe 3 months, and I'm working at Walmart now as a cashier. Back then, you could say to the cashier you have a particular coupon, and we could redeem it even if they didn't have a copy of it on hand. I don't know if this was countrywide, but it was done pretty frequently at the Walmart I worked at for obvious reasons. I know for sure this practice isn't done anymore, or maybe not as much. And guess what? The same entitled Karen I served prior shows up in my cash out lane and has loads of the same product. She was trying to redeem coupons she didn't have on hand, and my opportunity for petty revenge finally presented itself. And God, it felt so good seeing her getting really upset because I would not budge on redeeming non-existent coupons. The conversation went something like this. When she tried to redeem these coupons, she says something like, "They let me do it all the time, please." But I responded back to her by saying, "No, sorry ma'am, I cannot do that, nor will I do that. I will be breaking the rules to do this, and I'm not about to lose my job over it." She then said, "You can't even redeem this coupon that will only save me a couple of cents?" And after I told her no again, she then started getting incredibly upset. She said, "I went through a lot of trouble to get these groceries in my cart, and now I can't do anything with them." She was still super upset, but honestly, I did not care. I told her, "Nope, sorry ma'am, I need physical coupons." She ended up paying for everything in full. So I think if anything, the lesson learned here is to just be nice to customer service, because a lot of them will go above and beyond just to help you out if you show just some kind of decency. You love to see some petty revenge go towards an entitled Karen that absolutely deserves it. This absolute entitled Karen only tipped a few pennies to this poor server, and as a result, they missed out on a huge part of their wage. And this was after they promised that the problems they were having in the restaurant would not affect their tip. I mean, that is such toxic toxic behavior. But you know what? Karma has a wonderful way of coming right back around. So to watch this lady not get her way and have to pay for everything in full truly is a satisfying resolution to someone acting so entitled. My ex-husband refuses to pay the balance on the iPhone that I got him, and so as a result, I got some revenge. Here's what happened. So after previously leaving me with his $800 iPhone balance and refusing to pick it up, I shut my ex-husband's phone off, since I'm technically the owner of it. I was very kind in turning it back on for him after he paid me the money that he owed me from similar situations. However, the agreement was that he would pay me $120 on Friday, all because that was the day that he said he got paid, in order to keep using the phone that belongs to me. The Friday that he was supposed to pay me, I sent him a text reminder, to which he responded, yup, I'm on it. So I sent him my Cash App tag. Approximately 30 minutes later, I offered to provide him with an additional 10 minutes to send the freaking money over before I had to shut down the phone again. So he sent the money over an hour later, give or take a few minutes. But by that time, I had already shut off the phone. Once he realized that it had been shut off, he created a three-way call with me, as well as with him and a representative from the cellular company. He then stated that if the representative could not transfer the remaining balance minus the $120 over to his account during that phone call, he was canceling his service, giving up on the phone number, and giving me the phone back so I could sell it and recoup some of the money that he owed me, if not all of it, hopefully. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned, as in the end, the balance could not be transferred over, and my ex-husband said that he was giving me the phone back when he picked up our son from me later that day. But approximately 30 minutes before I expected him to pick up our son, he called me from a new number and told me that he no longer had the phone and that he obtained a government phone from his mother. He said that he was not willing to tell me any more information and was just saying that he no longer had the iPhone and that I'm still stuck making payments on it. He even had the audacity to mistakenly call me his girlfriend's name during his rant when he said, "You know what? It's gone. You can either accept that or not." The police won't even make a police report because nothing is finalized with the divorce. But despite that, I have my ex-husband convinced that he is facing theft charges, and given his history of doing some nefarious things, as well as having multiple run-ins with the law, he just wants me to drop the charges. So I milked an additional $50 out of him to put towards the remaining $600 that he still owes towards that stupid phone. And I don't expect this to last forever, because I suppose that this will only work as long as he remains stupid. But I'm still pretty upset about the whole ordeal. So as a bit of petty revenge, I've been taking Sharpies with me to bars and gas stations, and I've been scribbling his new government phone number from his mom in the men's stalls with a note in curly feminine writing, asking whoever reads it that they should call me for a good time. And I honestly don't regret it. Yeah, that's pretty messed up that your ex-husband basically, in my opinion, probably sold that phone off and said, okay, well, too bad, now you gotta pay for it. So I'm really sorry that you have to deal with an absolute moron of an ex-husband. Or at least soon to be, because it sounds like the divorce hasn't happened yet. I think if anything, you might be able to call your cell company and ask them to maybe turn off the phone again and tell them that your soon-to-be ex-husband lost it or possibly sold it off just so he wouldn't have to have any kind of payments towards it anymore. I'm not sure if they can do anything about that, but if anything, I'm sure they could at least brick the phone so that whoever has it can no longer access it. And there might even be a thing where they can just replace the phone and possibly send you a new one. I'm not sure of the details of that. You honestly gotta call your cell company. But hopefully that gets worked out, because unfortunately, you're gonna be stuck dealing with this guy for a long time. And hopefully for the sake of your son, he's at least decent and amicable, just so he can have a good life growing up. I told my girlfriend that we're moving to another state, and she's not giving me a straight answer of if she wants to come along with me. And at this point, I don't know what to do. I just got a job promotion this past week. It's a higher pay, but I have to move from Georgia to California in 2 months. I'm currently in a pretty serious relationship with my girlfriend. We're both 23 years old, and we met in college. We've also been official for a year and a half. I told her recently about the news and told her to really think hard about this situation. She told me that she's never lived with a man before, and she's also never left Georgia before either. So considering all that, she's obviously very hesitant, but she said that she will think carefully about it. I then gave her some reassurance and told her to take her time because it is a big change. She responded by saying that she has so many things to think about and that her moving would mean that she would no longer live with her brother, who helps her out a lot. I offered to help find a roommate, and she replied that she will think very hard about this. I had reached out to her a few days later and checked in to see if she's been thinking about it, hoping to prompt more conversations and concerns about what's going on, as well as to gauge her overall interest in even moving, but she didn't give me a straight answer at all. At this point, I'm getting a bit frustrated. I told her to let me know if it was a no when I first presented the news to her, but she is not really communicating with me on this. I'm starting to have doubts if she's even serious about the relationship at this point. I know that's ridiculous, but all she needs to do is ask me for more time instead of just dodging my questions. Her initial response seems to be interested but scared, and it made me even think of what is keeping her here in Georgia in the first place. I want to give her time and not be pushy, but I realize it's only been 72 hours since I asked her. But that's enough time to at least give me a direction of yes or no. Like, she's not even asking more questions. Do I need to give her more time? I know I told her to take her time and I want her to, but I sort of need an answer relatively soon because I need to plan if I'm moving into a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom apartment, amongst other things associated with the move. Part of me thinks that her answer was yes, but first let me think this over. At least that's how I took it initially, but now that she's not following up, I honestly don't know what's going on. And at this point, I don't know what to do. It sounds like the original poster is being incredibly pushy. I mean, you're asking her to move away thousands of miles across the country, and you then pop back in after 3 days and say, hey, so what do you think? You want to go? Like, that's obnoxious in my opinion. And I really think the original poster needs to take a step back. You said give her time. Well, then give her time. Let her think this through. She probably has friends and family and all sorts of people all in Georgia literally her entire life, most likely. You're asking her to uproot her entire life and go out to California with you. And that, in my opinion, takes a lot more than just 3 days to think about. So seriously, take a step back, give her some time to breathe, and just take this at her pace. Because this is not an easy decision to make. And in my opinion, I think you're being just a little too pushy. Today, I messed up by getting scammed out of $2,000, and I feel so stupid and I can't believe it. Here's what happened. So I'm a truck driver, and last night, as the title suggests, I got scammed out of $2,000. It happened at a gas station right before Las Vegas. I parked there to go to sleep and shut down for the night. I went down from my truck to walk around and stretch my legs a little bit. As I was walking around, a black SUV pulled up right next to me, and a rich-looking man rolled down his window in a panic. He looked desperate, and his wife was in the back seat crying with her 2 kids. He was asking for help because his wife's purse got stolen in Vegas, and it had all their things in it, like money and their passports. I saw how distraught this guy was acting, so I took $30 from my wallet, and I was going to give it to him just to help out. He pleaded with me that he needed more because he was heading to San Francisco, so he offered his necklace and gold ring. I refused, and I told him to just take the $30 so I could go back to my truck and rest. He kept begging me and offering his jewelry, and at this point I started to feel bad for the guy, so I went to my truck and I got $100. I was going to give this guy $130 for free, and I told him again and again, I don't want his jewelry. I'm literally just trying to help his family. He said he cannot take it for free and offered his jewelry still, but said he would need more money for it. This is when I should have just walked away. Call me foolish and naive, but I just wanted this guy to go away so I could rest. So I figured that if I just gave him like $300, I wouldn't feel guilty taking the jewelry, and he could just have enough money to make it to San Francisco. But at this point, he kept pleading and begging and adding more jewelry, and before I knew it, I was giving this guy about $750. Then his wife starts crying more and saying that they need more money for new passports and how it's $300 per person and that there's 4 of them in total. The guy offered the last bit of jewelry that he had, which was a Rolex watch that he said cost tens of thousands of dollars. It was at this point that I believed that my greed got a hold of me because this guy's telling me that he's a rich guy from Dubai and he doesn't care how much the jewelry costs. He's just desperate for cash so they can make it to San Francisco and then get back to Dubai. I don't know much about jewelry, so I thought that if I just give this guy $1,200 for his Rolex watch that I assume was real because he's Mr. Big Shot from Dubai, I could sell the jewelry and get my money back at the very least. So in total, I gave this guy just under $2,000 for 2 gold necklaces, 1 gold ring, and a Rolex watch. I was skeptical, of course, but like I said, I think my greed was clouding my judgment. Once I gave him the money, he began thanking me so much and started offering up a prayer and all this show and tell. He hopped back into his SUV and drove off. I watched him drive off all the way till he went to the freeway, and that's when I realized something. This guy took the freeway entrance going back to Vegas, and that's when my stomach turned, and I knew instantly that I just got lied to. I mean, after all, his whole story was about how he needed to get some money so he could get back to San Francisco. I walked back to my truck, and I laid down trying to process what just happened. I was staring at the jewelry, and then I looked up online of how I could tell if an 18-karat gold necklace was fake. And that's when I saw a news video on YouTube about people getting scammed on the road by some guy from Dubai offering their jewelry for money. The news described exactly what I just went through, and that the jewelry these scammers were using was obviously fake. I feel like a complete idiot, and I can't believe how naive I was to fall for this scam. I never thought I would fall for something like this, especially since I watch scam videos all the time online. So needless to say, I feel like a complete idiot. Yeah, I would feel pretty stupid too. You just wasted $2,000 on fake items. And the fact that this trucker carries around $2,000 with them on the road is not only super irresponsible, but also super dangerous. I'm pretty sure truckers deal with people trying to rob them like all the time. Why would you carry that much cash on you? And to top it all off, he got scammed by these people that have been scamming people all over Vegas. In my opinion, if someone comes up to you in the parking lot in Vegas, it's definitely not the best time to engage with them. I mean, personally, that's my rule for pretty much anywhere I go. My parents also taught me that if it's too good to be true, then it probably is, so you gotta be careful. And this is a perfect example of that, because no one in their right mind would start throwing jewelry out the window just so they could try and get back to San Francisco. I mean, that's craziness. And the fact that this guy was so loaded and rich is another hole in this guy's plan. I mean, if he's that much of a big shot, then he can clearly call somebody to help him out, right? Like he's definitely got to have some kind of connections with Vegas or something like that. Or at least somebody he can call to get some money to fly home. It all seriously is super suspicious, and it's really unfortunate that this guy fell for this. So next time you're in a parking lot and someone comes up to you asking for money, definitely think twice before engaging, because you very well could end up like this guy and lose $2,000 to some fake jewelry. My entitled brother sells all of my stuff, and when I confronted him about this, my parents actually defended him. So now I'm suing him. Here's what happened. I am 23 years old, and I am a very reserved person. I don't like to interact with other people, but I don't hate anyone. I have never been angry with a person because I assume that if you don't interfere with my life, everything is fine. Now, I have always been very close to my brother, even though he is very different from me, and we have always shared our stuff since birth. Recently, he has started to become an extremely bossy person at the house, with his parents buying him everything he wants, despite his catastrophic grades. He smokes, he drinks, and starts to force me to be mainly a cab driver for him. This puts a very bad atmosphere in the house, with my mother yelling at him a lot. Fortunately, on my end, I bought my dream computer after working incredibly hard, and every night I lock myself in my room and I spend my time coding, or in some cases playing video games. And you know what? I will happily take this quiet time, as this is right in between my very tiring engineering studies as well as the atmosphere at home, which can be very intense. Fast forward, and I had a 6-month internship in a big city in another country, and at the beginning of the internship, I love it because I've never left my small city. It was very difficult to live alone in an apartment, but after a few weeks, I really adapted, which really surprised me. I enjoy going out with people now, I feel more confident, and I even changed my clothing style to be more adult, and I really loved it. Another perk is that I've started working out since I don't have my computer in my spare time. At the end of my internship, I go back home and I find the same atmosphere as before, and nobody has noticed my changes in appearance. But I just ignore this, and when I arrive at night, I only want to find my computer to avoid the tense atmosphere and the screams that come along with this house. But that is when I was horrified to find out that my computer was not in my room. So I asked my mother, and she then tells me something that blows my mind. She tells me that my brother sold it, and I honestly could not be more upset by this news. I think at that point my brain just paused, and it was 10 seconds before I asked my mom if she was joking or not. She says no, and I honestly start to see red. I teleport to my brother's room and ask him why. He then tells me that he sold my computer to buy sneakers and clothes, and I ask him again, explaining this time that I want to know why he sold my computer, because I didn't give him the right to do it, and that I always use it for work. At this point, he starts laughing at me and tells me that I can buy another one, and that the money that he got from it was nothing to me. He then tells me that he sold my computer for $1,000, and when I heard that, I just about lost it, because that computer is worth so much more than that. Normally, I would have run away to my room to swear, but here I got angry, and I grabbed his laptop and destroyed it on the floor. The noise brings back my parents, and my brother yells at me, asking me what happened to me. I yell and explain that he had no right, and that he is an absolute jerk for doing that. I explain that I needed that for work and that it was mine. My father then comes in and angrily tells me to keep my voice down and says that it's just a computer. I told him with with all my anger to shut up and that he should realize that it is not normal to steal people's things. I then leave because even my parents do not support me, and after that I go to the police station to file a complaint. As the value of my computer exceeds $1,000, my brother is at risk of going to prison. My parents put pressure on me to drop the lawsuit against my brother, but I don't want to, and I don't want to be with them anymore, since they consider me less than nothing. And so fast forward, and we go ahead with the proceedings, and my brother, as a result, must give me back close to $5,000, including having to pay back my lawyer that I hired for this case. Because everything went down, my whole family hates me, and I have now cut ties with everyone. I am now living with my cousin, and I'm about to graduate, so I will soon have a job. I am in a hurry to leave and not see my family ever again, which doesn't bother me either, because the way they considered me was just unacceptable, and I don't think I was wrong. I feel completely justified taking my brother to court and winning, and I don't regret it in the slightest. That is fantastic that the original poster was able to get the money back so that they could buy their computer. The original poster went on to say that the computer was actually worth about $5,000, so they clearly had some serious setup that they did not want to try and replace on their own. So good for them for getting their money back and setting things right, because otherwise their brother could just get away with more stuff like this, and it would not be fair for the next person who has their stuff sold off by this entitled brother who would not have known that this is not a good thing to do. My friend and I have been unknowingly seeing the same person, and at this point I don't know if I should just walk away or what I should do. I have been seeing a man by the name of John for approximately 6 weeks. That is not his real name. We matched on a dating app, but I also knew him from the occasional hallway greeting at work. We've been spending some quality time together since the first date and have hung out at least once a week. Several days ago, I found out that my friend by the name of Sarah, also not her real name, has been also seeing him at the same time. They started talking 4 weeks ago, which was 2 weeks into me seeing him. They went on a date 2 weeks ago, and they had plans last week, but Sarah had to cancel. John has been very straightforward about wanting to spend some quality time with her during their texts and conversations. His date plans were an exact mirror of my experience. John and I did not have a conversation about exclusivity. Technically, he did nothing wrong by hooking up with her, but the fact that he used the same formula on her as he did with me really bothers me. I don't like that I was the backup option for the day she couldn't make it, especially since by that point, we'd been on dates without hooking up and have had conversations that I wouldn't do with a random fling. Sarah and I hung out in a group setting a couple days ago when the whole John ordeal came to light. I texted him as soon as I learned about it. The next day, Sarah and I met and we had a healthy one-on-one conversation about the situation where she disclosed everything, despite him asking not to. We decided it would be for the best for both of us to step back because she was developing feelings for him and I was beginning to feel very uncomfortable about things. After John had gotten text messages from each of us, he confessed to Sarah and me that he'd liked me for a while and wanted to pursue more, but was waiting until I was ready and would delete dating apps if I asked. He said he was planning to have a discussion about exclusivity the next time we met. I'm not sure how I should approach this. His interactions with Sarah led me to believe that he was only interested in something casual. If it weren't a close friend, I might be more objective about the situation, but with how things have unfolded, I'm not sure. Is initiating and pursuing some quality time with another person while in the beginning stages of non-exclusively dating someone that you like a red flag? Should I try dating him or commit to backing off? What should I do? I mean, honestly, I'm really surprised that you're even considering still going with this guy. This honestly sounds like a super sketchy situation. And you know what? He was probably in paradise. He literally had 2 women to pick from. And now he's like, oh, hey, I want to get with you instead of Sarah. But like, why would you even want to go with him? He's bargain hunting. Like, come on. He's playing stupid games and it's just really inappropriate. Also, for some context, this guy is almost 10 years older than Sarah and this original poster. Like, he clearly knows what he's doing, but I don't think you do. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would walk away. This guy is just toying with you and he's just trying to play both of you. And worst of all, he's old enough to know better. So it's time to find somebody who's actually going to be loyal and want to be with you specifically, and not just play around on the market just to try and find another woman that he can spend some quality time with. My parents hate my boyfriend, and I don't know how to move forward or what to do. My boyfriend and I are both 21 years old, and we have been dating for a year, but have known each other and each other's families for 10 plus years. His mom was a mentor of mine, and my family adored him. My parents are extremely protective and did not allow me to do much with anyone. With boys, they wanted a chaperone, and I could not not text, call, or be with them alone. But because they knew him, they let those rules go. When we started hanging out, many people in our church advised my parents to not let me get involved with him and to not trust him. He had a rough past and was always getting in trouble. They let us hang out for a couple of months, but things slowly got bad. He and I became each other's best friends, and we told each other everything. He told me about his troubles in high school and friend issues. He had left his friend group because of drama and was trying to be better himself. I told him how little time for myself I got, how I had basically no life outside my home, and wanted to move out by the end of summer. We hung out for 3 months without the chaperone rules, but we were still super respectful of my parents, and we would not be in a room or at home alone together. One instance, we were at a drive-in movie that didn't finish till after midnight, which was approved with no curfew, and my mom wasn't going to be home until 2 a.m. We stopped at the beach to talk for a while, because we had time, and then started the 45-minute drive back home. On our way back, I got a call from my mom freaking out because I was not home. I explained what happened and how I thought that she would be back after I got home. This was unacceptable, and they accused us of being intimate with each other and that we were apparently lying about it. At that point, I liked someone else, and he had no intentions towards me. They said it was deceitful and untrustworthy. After that, we were never allowed to be without an approved chaperone again, and now I had a 9 p.m. curfew. This resulted in a massive argument between my parents and me. They said they lost all trust in me, and they are trying to protect me from things I don't even know about. Word for word, they said, "You can never know what could happen. Things that you don't even know about. We can tell you from experience, there are things you just cannot fathom." I asked them to explain these things so I could be better prepared, and they would not tell me because they valued my innocence. Over the next month, we tried to earn that trust back, but we could not get through to them. I got super depressed, I had nightmares so bad, and I barely slept, and I almost left the state just to start over with my life. But my boyfriend helped me with so much. He was kind, caring, gentle. He encouraged me that things would get better, and he is the main reason why I stuck around. I got better, we got closer, and we tried so hard to stay on good terms with my parents, but it honestly wasn't easy. Home life for me was messy and toxic. I am the oldest of 6, and the majority caretaker of the home, and I work full-time. I was not treated very well, and I wanted out. My plan was to move out by the end of the summer, but then my boyfriend asked my parents for permission to officially start dating me and to give me a promise ring. We started dating, and my parents got even more strict, which left no room for me to ask if I can move out, so I just stayed. 2 months later, I got into another massive argument with them over a miscommunication, and my dad kicks me out. I go to stay with a friend, and my mom is begging me to come back home. My boyfriend wanted nothing to do with the argument and wanted to stay out of it as much as possible, but still was supporting me in making my own decisions without influence. My dad does apologize for kicking me out, and he does respect my decision for much needed space. I come back home for 2 weeks because I got sick and I had found a place to stay. They are not pleased with my decision to move out and were being passive-aggressively supportive. When the day came for me to move, they decided to paint their entire house and told me I couldn't bring friends over to help me move. I moved everything on my own. During this time, they found out that my boyfriend and I had spent some quality time together, and after they found out about that, they were furious. But not with me, they were furious with him. They felt betrayed. My boyfriend promised to protect me, and they felt that he had broken that promise and hated him for it. They were certain it started back on the beach, and I was coerced into it. They would not believe me when I told them that we started 3 months after dating. We didn't even kiss until we were dating, and I had initiated both of those situations. They demanded an apology from him, but never wanted to see him again. During that time, my boyfriend had serious surgery, and he was incapacitated for 4 weeks, and his family had COVID. He was physically unable to go see my parents, but also didn't want to talk to them till they started treating me better. For the next few months, my parents would beg for him to reach out while simultaneously berating him and low-key stalking him, with them having many 3-hour phone calls just to yell at me, telling me I'm throwing my life away and how he would never be good enough for me. The only thing that kept me in contact with them was the younger kids, as well as my boyfriend encouraging me to keep trying. Every time things got better, my boyfriend would go to reach out, but before he could, I'd get a phone call from them and spend the next week as an absolute wreck. This went on for 8 months. When my boyfriend finally reached out and made some actual plans, my parents canceled last minute and went on vacation. The next time he reached out, he got no response. This went on for 4 more months. Now, my parents are saying that they'll never forgive him and want nothing to do with him. When I moved out, my boyfriend had told me that he wanted to propose, but had made a promise to his brother who was engaged that he would not propose until after they had married, and their wedding was set out for a year. That year is now up. He has moved in with me and we want to get married, but not without my parents' permission, so we are in a bit of a tough spot. He wants to make things right with them, and I want them to be involved, but they want absolutely nothing to do with our relationship. They had never told me explicitly that they want us to break up, and personally, if we did break up, then our whole year and a half of trouble would be for nothing. I don't want that, and I don't think my parents want that either. They just don't know how to get over what we did. I do not know how to move forward, and I feel stuck and trapped again under my parents' thumb because they are still dictating my life. If he proposes, it would be without their permission, which neither of us wants. But if he doesn't, we may never get married, and we can never make things right. I personally feel like getting married would make our life decisions right, and we can all move on with our life together. I feel like I'm going to be forced just to force them to make a decision about whether they want to be a part of my life or not. But if I do that, I lose the relationship with my siblings and possibly my jobs. Because as another fun fact, we all work together. I'm at a crossroads and I honestly don't know what to do. I think the first thing the original poster needs to realize is that their parents cannot be fixed. They are toxic and they're going to stay toxic. The fact that they've written off your boyfriend right off the bat is absolutely ridiculous. They quite literally have not even given him a chance, and anytime he's tried to reach out and say, hey, let's meet up, they would cancel last second or avoid him, all while still saying, oh, he's a horrible person. Like, that's just really immature. You've tried to reach out, you've tried to do what's right, but they are not meeting you in some kind of middle ground. And that's not fair for you and your boyfriend. I mean, how can they not get the hint? You two literally live together. That's a pretty good litmus test, in my opinion, to see if you actually can stand the person in the first place. So for your parents to still not like him and have some kind of pride about this is really immature. I think if I was in your shoes, I would do what's right for me and my significant other. I would not let your parents dictate what you can and cannot do, because you don't live under their roof anymore. You can make your own decisions. And honestly, in my opinion, I don't think you need their permission to get married. If they want to be involved in your life, they will certainly make the effort. But if this is how they're going to continue to act, then honestly, I don't see this as a big loss. And when it comes to work, if you do decide to go about it this way, you can always find another job. You can easily find another job in your skill set that'll allow you to provide for yourself and support you and your future husband. Because otherwise, you are just going to be stuck, just like you said. And I honestly can't think that your life is ever going to be happy if you let your toxic, weird parents dictate what you can and cannot do in your adult life. Today, I messed up by not realizing that my microphone was on during an important meeting, and now I'm in deep trouble. To keep the intro short, I'm a sales analyst for a business many people may be familiar with, and I'm at a lot of board meetings as it's the corporate end of things. Lately, it's been a hybrid work environment, so a lot of our meetings are hybrids. So because of this, we're outfitted with microphones just for the occasion. They're little Bluetooth clip-ons, like you'd never notice on your favorite YouTuber. I'll be frank, I hate the company, but they pay the bills. That aside, when you have a bunch of bald eggheads in a room talking numbers for hours, it can get pretty dull. I'm usually very good about this sort of thing, and there's no hitch. Today, however, I just was not having it. We had a board meeting in which a lot of the talk was about if the hybrid full remote workplace was a good idea, and somehow these egg-headed morons landed on no. I heard that part and kind of shrunk in my chair, because the opportunity to be in the comfort of my own home really does balance out how much you dread this job sometimes. I don't give my input on things usually. I tend to just let the executives duke it out, but they genuinely for a moment seemed like they had dropped the ball, and that was strike one. The next subject came up was the pay. Oh, the greatest point of contention. A lot of facilities that the lower tier executive visited were in god-awful disrepair, and if there's anything these folks like to do, it's not taking accountability for giving the workers what they need and clear-cut metrics to achieve. Pay cuts were talked about, and it's convenient that the bar was drawn at my level, Sales Analyst 1, as well as everybody below me. I excused myself and thought I'd left my microphone in the room, but actually I still had it on me as I went to the restroom. I didn't need to use it, thankfully, but I did heavily vent how stupid of a discussion that was. I pointed out how asinine it is that they would cut everyone's pay but their own, alongside calling certain folks by name, a variety of descriptive names, if you know what I mean. While I was in the bathroom, I really went in. That is, until I dropped my microphone. Yeah, it was on me the whole time. I debated hard about going back in. I honestly honestly thought that they would fire me over PA or something, but no, they talked it up in there until I returned, and then they said the following: Miss Original Poster, it's clear you feel very strongly on the matter, given your very colorful expression. What would you suggest we do when the facilities are failing to meet our expectations? And at this moment, a part of me left my soul for just a moment. This is a really good job, and I would hate for what was supposed to be a candid moment in private be something that ends everything. They made it clear that they understand my frustrations and would hear me out, but I did get a bit of chewing out from my superiors, who got secondhand embarrassment from hearing what I had to say, while also throwing in some spineless name-calling to boot. My heap of paperwork is high, and luckily none of it is disciplinary action. I did propose much better alternatives, and I wish I could disclose the brand so the workers could thank me for potentially saving their pockets, but there's no telling if they would listen. I'm still really all shook up from it, and it is probably my greatest blunder in life so far. That sounds like an absolute nightmare. I can't imagine excusing myself from a virtual meeting just to try and vent in my bathroom over something stupid that's going on that's going to affect your bottom line and your paycheck, only for everybody in that boardroom to basically hear exactly what you have to say. I would be unbelievably embarrassed at that situation. But from the sounds of it, it really did kind of work out. It sounds like they took your advice seriously, and you saved a lot of people a lot of money. And to be honest, these top executives probably needed somebody to step in and shake the cage just a little bit, and you just happen to be that person unintentionally. So good for you for at least speaking up, even though you really didn't mean to. It made a world of difference, even if you are slightly traumatized as a result. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.